Hump Day Wednesday. And the week flying along, right? I'll tell you what, this week is moving with more fluidity than. And I made a pact to myself. Part of my maturity. I made a pact to myself that I was not going to complain about this, but rather simply go with the flow. Serenity now.
The
right?
rapids are too fierce in canoe slalom?
The E. coli in the water of the canoe slalom is screwing up the entire Olympics. No. I am aware and try to be understanding and whatever else of the fact that part of progress, part of improving a city, part of growth, in the summertime, you're going to have construction because you can't do it in the winter. You know, I mean, I've been to Milwaukee, but, man, that's the summertime. It's nothing but orange barrels. Well, yeah, they can't exactly, get out and do the roads in January. It's covered in ice and -10, right?
Have you been to Cincinnati?
Well, yeah. I mean, any of them, right? Any city, right? But it's becoming now, driving downtown, it's like Frogger or Tetris. I mean, literally, it's seemingly, in my mind, every day, just when you get a path that you're used to, boom, there's a 2-block stretch, and it's under construction, and they're laying down new water lines or whatever, so it's a very fractured drive-in, let's say that. But it is summertime, it's nice outside, and, it'll all be wonderful when we are moving with great fluidity. Although I will say, and then we'll get to the subject at hand here, I mentioned this yesterday. If you're coming up from, Jimmy, your neck of the woods where you grew up on the south side, and you're coming up 65 North, I'm 51 years old. I will be 109 years old and still be confused by the fact that the way that they now have the split coming from the south is that in order to go 70 east, which would be to your right, you have to veer left. And in order to go 65 north, which veers to the right, veers to the left, you've got to get to the right. It's the total opposite. Yeah. And then there's an up and under move, right? Psychologically speaking, I'm telling you now, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sticking by it. 82% of all people coming up 65 North that are on their way to Chicago end up in Dayton. 82%. I don't know if you know that or not.
Well, especially if you dedicate your driving routine to muscle memory.
Totally.
Like sometimes I'll just be driving and it's my body is taking me where I'm supposed to go, and then I look up and it's like, wait a minute.
Don't you ever get somewhere right? And you think to yourself, I have no recollection of driving on Fall Creek Parkway?
Yes.
Yeah. Because sometimes things just become routine, right? And that's the case with Colts camp. This is the good news for Colts camp in terms of being routine on this Wednesday. And thank you for joining us. My name is Jake Query. You just heard from Jimmy Cook, Eddie Garrison as well. It's Query and Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Jimmy, reality is that what you want this time of year, quite frankly, probably not good for business, but what you want this time of year is monotony and routine and muscle memory when it comes to Colts camp. You want the storylines to be the same thing each and every day, and for it simply to be going through the process so that we're not talking about, oh gosh, the big news of the day, so-and-so was carted off, or so-and-so has left the team, or so-and-so is holding out. So far, the Colts have avoided that, although it's very early on. But today, after yesterday being in pads, out in shells, I guess, are just – shells means what? Just like light
Are you talking
padding,
about the noodle?
That's right. They are –
like shells and cheese? Like mac and cheese?
Emily Longnecker the other day gave Shannon and I a dish of stuffed shells that she made.
Ooh.
And let me tell you something.
Seashells?
Delightful.
Emily of the Italian,
I bet those were so good.
Background.
Oh,
unbelievable, right? I mean, when she was living in Italy and buying that leather jacket that caused her to have to work at the Zippo factory, she learned how to make herself some stuffed shells, I can tell you that. No, so the Colts are back in action and in practice today. As a matter of fact, they just wrapped up a little bit ago, and my understanding is, Eddie, did you get a hold of Juju Brents?
Yes, I did.
And did you say he's going to be able to join us today?
Yeah, right at noon.
It's noon right now.
Yeah. 12:30.
Okay.
I can't speak.
25 minutes from now.
Yeah.
Juju Brent's going to call in. Okay, so we'll talk to Juju Brents, kind of get a lowdown of what's going on. Kevin Bowen was out at practice, of course, and Andy and Kevin were there this morning. The one thing we know, Jimmy, is that Kevin said that Alec Pierce had a good day. I don't know exactly what that means, but that's good. I mean, I don't mean that to mock Kevin. I'm saying I guess for Alec Pierce, a good day means that he was catching what was going his way, but then tweaked something maybe?
Yeah, this from that same post from Kevin. And again, for all stuff at camp, you can follow him on Twitter at KBowen1070. Of course, we have great content on 1075thefan.com. But he highlighted the fact that while Pierce had a nice day, including a really impressive deep grab from Joe Flacco, Pierce appeared to get hurt trying to haul in an Anthony Richardson overthrow late in practice. He didn't return, but did stay at practice, interacting with his fellow wide receivers. Jake, part of what, again, this is putting on the hat of not a doctor, just the way that camp often goes. Depending on when this happened during camp, and it was about 25 minutes ago that Kevin sent the tweet out, you would hope that maybe it's just enough of a dinged up situation where it's so hot out and just the amount you're putting your bodies through already. Don't rush it, Alec. Forget about it. Like, it's fine. Practice is basically almost towards the end there versus a more serious, like you've highlighted, we've seen the last couple of days, the cart being out or something like that. I would hope this is just a precautionary, hey, let's get you checked out and, head you off to the side here. But again, that's just me speculating. That is not, there's been no recent tweet about Alec Pierce's status other than he did stay out there interacting, not practicing.
Here's what's weird to me. So you're driving along. Okay.
Where are you driving?
Well, that's what I was going to get to here. Whenever I drive, I always look at the skyline of the different cities I'm driving to compare it to the skyline of Indianapolis. Now, the best vantage point of the skyline of Indianapolis, the area where it's the most impressive, in my opinion, and I've scouted this from many a territory, if you are coming from the north on I-70, so basically you're actually coming from the east. But if you're coming on 70, just before you get to the split, if you're coming from the east side of town, when you bend around and the city is before you and you're about 2 miles from the Ohio Street exit, that's the best vantage point of downtown. But I always get, when any city that I drive through, we just went to Nashville and, so we drove through Louisville and then you come up on Nashville. I always compare it to, how does this look versus the Indy skyline? And what do people who are not from Indy think of our skyline? So if you're driving, to answer your question, Eddie, you're driving from the south. Let's say you're from, give me a city south of us, Jimmy.
Louisville,
Kentucky. So you're from Louisville, you're on your way to Chicago. You've never been to Indianapolis. You're driving up 65. You're driving along, and here comes the skyline. And so you're looking at the skyline, and you're looking to your left, and you're seeing it, and you're seeing the one building that's apartments that looks like the cube that goes on top of a flash camera from the 80s, and that's where Market Square used to be. And you're driving along, and you're saying, well, this is a nice town. This is a pretty town. And what you know is that you're going to Chicago, right? So you're looking to the left, looking and enjoying this, and then you say to yourself, look at this. This is an 8-lane wide cruise on this beautiful new pavement with what looks to be like almost architectural artwork along the borders of it, and it's as clean as a whistle, and there are no marbles on the side of the road. I mean, they must have just done this, and this is immaculate. They literally hired Da Vinci and Michelangelo to come up with this interchange. This is incredible. And you're looking at it, and you're enthralled by it, and you're totally captivated by it, and then the next thing you know, you're in Huber Heights, Ohio, the largest brick collection of homes in the United States, because you're saying to yourself, wait a minute, I know that I needed to go to the right, so why? And I stayed right, and now all of a sudden it makes no sense at all, right?
There's no rhyme or reason or logic to it.
I'd like to know who came up with that.
I don't know who came up with the design. I have the same issue if you are driving north of downtown and you're trying to get towards 70. If you're not careful, you're going to wind up on 65. The same exact thing happens. Like if you don't navigate through properly, you're going to wind up
because you go the opposite direction of what you've done for 50 years.
You have to stay alert across the board whenever you're trying to merge onto different highways around central Indiana.
We knew yesterday when we were on the air that the USA women's gymnastics team would win gold, but that aired last night during prime time. Did you watch it? I did. It was pretty exciting. Simone Biles is amazing.
I did. It was great to see a bit of a redemption tour for Simone. The media across the board was pretty harsh on her in 2021, dealing with the mental health issues that plagued her and forced her to have to withdraw from that event, the entirety of the competition for Team USA. To be able to see them back on top. And of course, she'll still have individual routine, but be able to see that and see her again at the height of the sport, at the height of all that she is for a representation of athletes here in America was truly special. She's one of the greats, Jake, and it's awesome to be able to, we mentioned it, the crossover of every 4 years, you're not paying attention necessarily to world championships. You're not paying attention to the different events that happen outside of the 4-year cycle, but to have somebody represent the United States in such an emphatic way while also being able to dominate their respective sport, it's really special when those worlds collide. And for somebody like Simone, who went through so much adversity in 2021, and all of Team USA to respond and get back to where they wanted to be was really special, both on the live shots yesterday during the afternoon and then the recap last night as well was great. That, though, Jake, I know we talked about it at the end of the show, and I watched more highlights last night. I don't know, and I know that was a gold, so maybe I'm totally in the wrong here, so feel free to push back. That still didn't top for me the 8 seconds of women's rugby that we watched yesterday where they steal bronze at the very end at the horn from Australia.
One of the 11 bronzes won so far by the United States. If you did not see it in women's rugby yesterday, that took place yesterday while we were on the air, I think, right?
Yep.
Essentially, and I'm going to put this in football terms. My apologies to those that are rugby enthusiasts, because I know that it's a wildly popular sport, but it's not to the level of the mainstream knowledge of football. A score in rugby, I believe, is it 6 points? So I don't know what they were down.
I think it's 5, but
okay,
yeah.
5. But either way, and again, my apologies to rugby people. I mean this is no disrespect.
5 plus an extra kick or
But I'm going to put this in football lingo. The American women were down by a touchdown with 8 seconds to go.
Yep.
Not the extra point. They were down 6 in football terms, right?
Right.
So they basically come up with a scrum design play with 8 seconds to go where they do a toss back to one of their elite runners who then breaks a tackle and then basically a straight 80-yard sprint into the end zone to score, which made it level, by the way, at 12 apiece. And then they had to convert the extra point to win with no time on the clock, which they did. They won the bronze. They have now won the United States 11 bronze, 12 silvers, and 4 gold medals. The 27 total medals now is the tops in the world. France at 21 and Britain at 17. Do you ever notice that the host country is always second in medal count, no matter where it is?
I've never noticed that.
The Winter Olympics could be in Antarctica, and they'd be second in the medal count. It's unbelievable. Whoever the host country is always has like extra medals.
The polar bears on the luge is something you just see, honestly.
Right?
So.
And they're all drinking Cokes.
Exactly.
Now, I also saw that I believe this is correct. Amongst the medals that the United States won, they did not win a medal in rifle shooting. Is that correct?
That is accurate, yes.
We have 25 times the number of rifles in this country of the rest of the world combined. How do we not win in that sport?
Or get on the podium.
At least, right? How do we not win in that sport? What are we doing here? All these people that are stockpiling, do none of them go out and actually, like, practice?
You know what the problem is? We're all hoarders here. It's not a matter of practicing.
That's right.
We just want them, right?
I know. That's my thing. I'm like, is nobody going out and practicing in this? How do we not have 5 people that can win us a medal in this competition? I watched archery last night. Have you ever tried to do that?
No. You?
It's impossible. Like when I was in Cub Scout camp, anybody that is of my, probably the age range of the 3 of us that ever went to Belzer Day Camp, I loved it. The Belzer Beast. Cub Scout Belzer Day Camp right over by Lawrence Central High School, off Boy Scout Road. They had, one of the things that we learned was rifle shooting. I mean, it was a BB gun. Anybody of my age, I'm telling you right now, when I do this, somebody driving in their car or at work is going to go, oh my gosh, I haven't heard that in forever. But if you went to Belzer Cub Day Camp, scouting camp in the, 70s through the early 90s, you did the BB gun thing where the lady said, and I quote, cock and load and lying prone. Everyone remembers that. Cock and load and lying prone. And boom, you did it. And then, but archery was one of the things they had, and it was, I have such a respect for that. There are so many events in the Olympics that you watch. And if you go out and you actually try it, you say to yourself, it is incredible the skill that they have. And I watched some of the archery last night, and you would probably snicker at somebody that does it and doesn't hit like a bullseye target every time because you're like, you're an Olympian until you go out and try to do it.
Oh, I
And
still struggle if
impossible.
if my nephews have the foam bow and arrow set to try to get that
Totally.
thing set up, let alone if you actually gave me real arrows and a real bow.
You know, they should put darts as an Olympic sport, and Jason Sudeikis would win gold, right?
He would indeed.
That's right.
Barbecue sauce, right?
Yes.
I'm surprised that
'Cause
we're
he's
not
curious.
there yet because, like, I know I joked about it halfway jokingly in December, but, like, there are few things non-major sports division as electric from a crowd standpoint as competitive darts. Like, we talked about it when I was betting on Luke Littler for the World Dart Championships in December, and you and John were giving me 1-809 with it, as usually is the case. But, like, I'm surprised we're not at a point where that's an Olympic sport because it's, like, uber competitive, and most of the time, Jake, it is either bullseye hunting or it is throwing
Okay.
it exactly where it needs to be. No, I don't know how darts are scored, so I
Which
can't help
becomes an Olympic sport first?
you. Okay,
Darts?
all right.
I'm trying to think of a second one here because I've got a third one that I think is going to be the winner in this, what I'm talking about here. But we'll go with darts number one. Is rollerblading? I know you think of
Speeds, but that's for the Winter Olympics, isn't it? Is there
Yes,
speed
but
rollerblading?
There used to be in the Pan Am Games. There was because my dad was in charge of it as a volunteer.
Yeah.
But the third one I'll go with is pickleball. How long before pickleball is an Olympic sport?
I mean, I would feel like it's
Next
on the
Olympic
horizon.
cycle.
Is pickleball mad crazy worldwide or just the U.S. though?
That's also a great question. I've not looked at the overall breakdown of
Because
it.
I
but
want pickleball in the Olympics because if they're going to take out the basketball courts at my gym to put in pickleball, then we need something worth it. And by the way, when they put in the pickleball courts in my gym, they sent an email to everybody that said, we're taking out the basketball courts in addition to the racquetball courts. And I said, you're taking out the racquetball courts to put in pickleball. So basically what you're doing is you are removing the late 70s pickleball because that's
You're
what
right.
it was. It was everywhere.
here's an ignorant question in that same vein, because you asked, is pickleball popular worldwide? And my answer is I don't know. I would assume we're at a stage where there's World Pickleball Championships, but I have no idea. Is flag football popular worldwide? Because that's being
That's a good
inserted
one.
into the Olympics in LA. And I get it. There's such an American craze for regular football that the idea of flag football, I'm glad it's there. But, like, if that can get in, why not pickleball?
Do they have are there some Olympic events? Because I think they call them, like, before they become an Olympic event, what are they called? Not like trial runs, essentially. I think skateboarding was one of them. But are there some events that are placed in strictly because of the host country and that they are only in that Olympic Games because of the host country?
So you think breakdancing is in the Olympics because it's in France?
Well, I don't
or
know.
Paris?
I don't know if that's why, but it's not in LA. It's only in Paris.
Now, beer
right
pong.
now, it's not.
If it was in the
LA.
United States, beer pong would be a big one, right?
We'll find out in 4 years. But
Beer chugging.
breaking is not on the docket for 2028 as it stands. It was only a potential one-off thing in Paris. I don't know if it was because of what you're saying, Jake, that it was a host event that Paris chose, or if it was just a test run by the IOC. But as of right now, breaking is only in the Paris Olympics. It's not over in LA.
By the way, Darnell Booker, our buddy, says cornhole will be next Olympic sport. That's not bad.
That's a good one.
And congratulations to Darnell, by the way, who was just announced and inducted into the Beep Ball National Hall of Fame.
That's
Let's
awesome.
go.
For his
Congratulations.
results in coaching
Let's
with
go.
the Indy Thunder and really being kind of the spearhead of all of it throughout Indianapolis. All right, let's get back to Colts camp, guys. I was thinking about this with Alec Pierce. Let me present to you, Jimmy, a situation with Alec Pierce, and you tell me which way you think it would go, okay?
All right.
Do you remember, and I hate to go with, I'm going to name another like athletic white receiver. I don't mean that by any stretch of the imagination to be intentional, but do you remember Ricky Prohl? Ricky Prohl was a good receiver for kind of a utility outfielder, if you will, as a receiver. He played with the Colts for a while. He was with Carolina. He was with the Rams. The Colts have had guys like this, players that come in and they can kind of play a couple of different positions. Devin Funchess, I know he got hurt, but somebody that you just go in and he's your kind of number 3-4 receiver, gets you 4 to 5 catches a game, has an occasional breakout game, but for the most part, it's just kind of a utility guy that can back up a couple of different positions and is a nice, solid player for you. If that's what Alec Pierce becomes, if it turns out that the Colts have a receiving core of Michael Pittman as their primary guy and a big target and a yard-after-catch guy, Josh Downs is a slot guy that is just kind of roaming around and can make plays, and then A.D. Mitchell, let's say, really develops and evolves and becomes a behind-the-defense guy. If Alec Pierce shows himself to be a capable Swiss Army knife that you can spell any of those three guys with by putting him in different situations and throw him 4 to 6 balls per game and he catches, 80% of the times that he's targeted for a 12-yard gain, and that's who he becomes. And they have a really good offense, and he is a contributing member of that offense. If you had selected that guy in round 4 or 5, or if you'd signed him as a free agent from Green Bay as a quiet pickup in the offseason, you would say, he's a good player. That's a good guy you need to have in your locker room. That's a invaluable player that just does what he needs to do. But is he harmed by the expectation and spotlight of being the first name called for the Colts in the year that he was selected, and I believe that was the case, but a second-round pick that was essentially, they dropped back, so kind of a first-round pick. Is he hurt by that fact, and therefore it is a boom or bust proposition for him where either you produce to the level of where you were acquired or you have to go somewhere else to really get your footing and blossom? Philip Dorsett's a good example of this. Dorsett was just kind of here, and then I think he went a couple other places, maybe New England, and was in Miami maybe, and was a decent player. And there, people probably were like, oh, yeah, he's good to have on our roster. But here, the expectation for him was different. Paris Campbell's a really good example of that. The expectation here was different, and so it was a change of scenery that allowed him to really kind of blossom. If Alec Pierce becomes just a nice, steady, rotational Ben Shepherd, if he's the Ben Shepherd of receivers, is that enough?
As long as it's enough for him. Yes, if that's the role that he fills, if he's catching, I know you just threw out 80% there just to throw it, but even if he's only catching 70% of the passes thrown his way, if it's to give a guy a spell, if it's situational football for him and he's happy with that, then yeah, it's fine. You cloud out or you ignore the noise, block it all out, and you keep doing you. If you're focused on what you were drafted to be, which is the same hype, not directly, but you get what I'm saying in terms of draft selection, the same hype we currently have for A.D. Mitchell because he's the shiny new toy that was drafted in the second round that's supposed to be an explosive weapon for the Colts. If that's the mentality that Alec Pierce continues to have, and it's clear that those opportunities are not here for him, then it becomes a negative. But if he is accepting the fact that this is who I am in this offense, which is a situational receiver that is maybe giving guys a breather, that is going for a couple deep shots a game, if he's okay with that and can excel in that role, then it's a perfect fit for him. He's under contract, team control for 2 more seasons. It's a team-friendly deal with where he was drafted, where he's only owed about, I think, effectively a cap hit of $2 million in 2026, the last year of his deal. So, or 2025, I beg your pardon, the last year of his deal. So, no, that's perfectly fine. The bigger issue is if he as a player feels that he has been passed by or he is being overlooked because of missteps in the past. Some of them you could argue weren't his fault given the quarterback situation, and because the talent around him is better. If he's unhappy with that role, Jake, that's where it gets to be a problem. But if you're telling me that I can have an Alec Pierce that is fully accepting of a role where he's, I don't know, getting 15 snaps a game and is having a 4 for 8 or 5 for 8 type of reception day, that's the perfect role for this team. That's exactly what you need from him, even though, as you and I have highlighted over the last couple of weeks, yeah, where he's drafted, it's never going to not follow him. It will always follow him here. The question is, can he overcome that mentally? That's where you get into change of scenery spot. If he can't get over the fact that he was drafted to be an impact player in the second round, and that might not be what he's asked to be in the Colts offense, then that becomes a problem.
I've always said the Alex Smith, Ryan Tannehill rule, right? Alex Smith and Ryan Tannehill are two guys that if you look at where they were initially drafted and what they were able to do, in Alex Smith's case, the number 1 overall pick to San Francisco, and by the way, Alex Smith, as I've mentioned many times before, is a great part of a great trivia question. The only university to have the number 1 overall pick in football and basketball in the same season, same year, same calendar year. And it's Alex Smith and Andrew Bogut. Andrew Bogut's another one that falls into this category. Andrew Bogut, by the time he went to Golden State, was a really good player. But because he was drafted number 1 overall, and I'm trying to think of who drafted him number 1 overall. I think it was Milwaukee.
It was Milwaukee, yeah.
Milwaukee, they're like, really? But he was a good – and Alex Smith, by the time he got to Kansas City and Washington, really good, solid player. But San Francisco expected more because he's number 1 overall. And so when you look at the same thing with Tannehill, Miami, huge expectation. Then goes to Tennessee, kind of reinvents, really solid player. But Tennessee didn't have the investment in him. And that's what I wonder for Alec Pierce. Is it the investment that applies the additional pressure and changes the scope by which we are measuring him, when in reality, if he is a serviceable Swiss Army relief-type player, then you look at it and you go, okay, that was a good pick. And he was a second rounder, not a first rounder, but it felt like a first rounder, to be honest with you. Juju Brents, by the way, last year sat out a lot of camp. This year, very active. Corner out of Warren Central is set to call us, and he's set to do it next.
The concrete and aggregate experts. We'll find out in 30 seconds. Do you want to work for a company who has your back? You can count on Shelby Materials. Shelby Materials has 10 ready-mix locations in central Indiana and is looking for Class B CDL drivers. Highlights include being home every night and every other weekend off during peak season. Shelby Materials stands behind its work, products, and people. We support our employees with competitive wages and benefits, including 401k, PTO, paid holidays, HSA, and a sign-on bonus. Learn more about your next opportunity by visiting ShelbyMaterials.com.
Now, what's happening on West 56th? Brought to you by Shelby Materials, the concrete and aggregate experts.
Colts camp resuming up in Grand Park. Of course, midway through the week, they are back to shells, not pads. But joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line, a guy that is happy to be out there because in year number 2, camp is a lot more busy than it was in his rookie campaign. The pride of Warren Central, Juju Brents, joining us on the show. Juju, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How y'all doing?
We are well, thank you. And I want to get right to that first point, and that is, you know, a year ago there was so much like kind of sitting and waiting for Juju Brents to find out what you could do because of the fact that you had the wrist injury, I think it was, through camp, and then different points of the year there were injuries. How refreshing is it, and just how different is the approach for you mentally this year versus last?
Yeah, I would say this year for sure. Just actually being out here, mentally just, taking advantage of every single one of these reps. I just remember last year, just kind of almost in a sense like fiending and just itching to be out there with my guys to be able to compete. So now that I am out there, man, just not taking none of it for granted. Just appreciating it while I'm out here and just competing my ass off. Shoot.
Juju, I've been critical of what the secondary could be this year as a whole outside of you and Kenny Moore. I view you as a veteran leader, even though you're only in your second year, and Kenny Moore's track record speaks for himself. But we've been critical about what the rest of the secondary might be, inexperienced, a second year for them. Why are we maybe being too harsh? What are we not seeing behind the scenes for why the rest of your group could actually be really good this year?
We all Kenny himself, I just see the way he works. He's going almost year 8 now. We all just got that chip on our shoulder. We try to just keep our head down, keep working. And, we got some doubters out there, man. But I just want to tell you 100% we got some dogs in our back end. I know we get the young tag and all that, but we got some dogs, guys who go compete. I think a lot of people forgetting about our boy Dallas Flowers, who's coming back this year. Last year he was balling, but then had the gruesome, Achilles injury. But he's coming back. JJ, another baller. Gerald Baker. Let's go on and on, man. But I know we get the young tag. But one thing about us, man, we compete. We compete our ass off. We going to surprise a lot of people, man, especially in the AFC South.
When you look, Juju, at your rookie year, one of the things I like about you is I loved your size, your athleticism at the corner. But my suspicion is that from college to pro, the window gaps are so much faster, right? The ball is coming so much faster, and you probably can't play off as much as you did at the collegiate level because everybody you're going against is an elite level route runner or a speed guy as well. How hard was that adjustment? Is that a fair statement? And if so, how hard was it? How long did it take to figure that out?
Yeah, ball is ball. Everybody's fast, physical. Like on the NFL level, the guys do run a lot more crisp routes. You can't take a play off. I would say that's one thing for sure. But then the big difference is the quarterback play. Like you said, the timing is to a T. So for me, any way where I could just disrupt, get half a second, throw off that timing, that's a win. A lot of the times it's going to throw the receiver and the quarterbacks, timing off and allow me to possibly make a play on the ball. So that's one of the biggest adjustments. Just like you said, just the timing, figuring that out, learning the schemes of the offense. What are they trying to do to attack my leverage or whatnot, and then start off the timing. And then at the end of the day, just try to get my head on the football, get some takeaways for the offense.
As a unit, as a defensive backfield, how important is camp to have everybody out there simply to become aware of the instincts and the movements of your teammates in free motion? In other words, always being aware of who's behind you, who might have, who's covering a gap, and where they are. Do you kind of instinctively start to learn that about different teammates?
Definitely, you definitely do. And I would say it's huge. I give a lot of credit to, my college coaches who always just preached on awareness. And they used to just give me examples when I'm outside of, football, when I'm walking around the street, just being aware. Just treating it like I got guys pulling and coming around, trying to block. I know it's kind of weird to think about it like that, but when I always had that approach, is always being aware. It allows me to have that same approach when I'm on the football field. So you see the guys who are instinctually aware when on the field. It is kind of second nature. They kind of see the play happen before it happens, and they'll just make that play on the fly. You know, it's a lot of moving parts. Guys aren't going to just stand there and just let you get your hands on them. They're going to try to, get themselves in the right position by moving around and throw off your alignment and things of that nature. So just being mentally aware every single play and being locked in for 6 seconds. 6 seconds of hell is basically is key. It's key. And these reps out here, man, you got to take advantage of them for sure.
Colts cornerback Juju Brents is our guest. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Juju, last year following Combine, you had surgery on your left wrist, and you've talked about earlier in this off-season program that a year ago you were unable to experience a full off-season, a full healthy off-season. Having all that behind you and having the opportunity to go through all that an off-season entails fully healthy, what has that meant to you, and what has that helped in your development between year 1 and year 2?
It's been a lot, man. It's honestly just been a blessing to be able to be out here with my guys. I'm a football guy, man. Like, I love just playing ball. Simple as that. I love playing ball. So I'm not out here to be able to do that. It's tough. It's devastating. But so just being able to be out here is a blessing. And like I said earlier, like, I don't take any rep for granted. It has allowed me to, have all those middle reps I had last year to come out here with just some confidence. Because I know I can ball regardless. I don't care who it is in front of me. I know I'm going to win. That's the type of mentality I have. But now, like, physically being out here and be able to prove that, just to be able to complete my tail off with my guys, man. We got a lot of great receivers on the offensive side. Michael Pitt, Josh Downs, even some of the young guys, Adonai, just iron sharpens iron. So give us a lot of confidence, come out here and compete, man. I'm just grateful to be out here with my guys.
Which Colts wide receiver that you line up against in practice most improves you throughout the course of a practice session and most keeps you on your toes? A guy who I would say I would give a lot of credit to is it's probably JD, because of the fact I normally don't guard his type of body type of receivers quite often. So anytime when I do get JD outside, I know it's gonna be some work. I got to be on, alignment assignment, keys, good feet, good hands from the start. He's a real shifty guy. Compared to like a guy like Pittman, even AP, a little longer, more physical type guys, longer strides. Josh Downs is real, quick twitch. So just giving me a different type of receiver to guard, different looks. I love going against JD, man. Great competition. And, of course, as you just mentioned, JD, Josh Downs, what have been your impressions so far, perhaps limited, but of A.D. Mitchell? Because there's a lot of expectation on what he might be able to do as well.
I think he's going to be special. Simple as that. Like, I've seen a lot of good receivers, guarded a lot this past year. Some of the best of the best. And A.D., he's one of those guys where I can see he could be one of the top receivers in this league, and I don't say that lightly. He got a lot of good tangibles that you love out of receiver, good hands, runs very good routes. He's unpredictable, which is very tough for a cornerback to be able to guard. So I like what I'm seeing out of him right now, man, and just looking forward to him continuing to keep improving, man, and help us this upcoming year.
Juju, on the other side of the field, of course, in division, you're going to have the likes of C.J. Stroud and Trevor Lawrence, but also on the schedule for you this year, Jordan Love, Tua Tagovailoa. When you go through the schedule itself, when you look around the entire AFC, I know this is kind of a silly question, but how difficult is it in today's NFL, especially against quarterbacks like that, to play your position, and how do you thrive in that element?
Man, when you're a cornerback, like, this position ain't for everybody, but you gotta love it. It's gonna be times you go get beat, you go win some, but you gotta win your fair share more than you lose. So you're a competitor, man. You play the cornerback position, and I love it. I love to go against the best. It's going to be a great challenge for all those guys in the back end. And, man, going against, Jordan Love, where we don't care. Like, week by week, we go accept the challenge, man. We're going to go out there and compete. So I'm looking forward to them all.
Juju, it's been a year now. It's very cool that you're obviously playing in your hometown. You get to watch Warren Central or follow them. You've got friends and family right here supporting you. But at the same time, that can come with temptations, I guess. To maybe go over and hang out at the house and eat more food than you're supposed to, or hang with your guys or whatever. I mean, normal things, admittedly. But how did you wade through being able to sort out those temptations and being able to stay focused? Has it been harder in your hometown than it would be if you'd been drafted elsewhere?
I get that question quite often, and honestly, man, it just falls back on your core values. I didn't get in this position on accident. it just falls back on my core values of having discipline. Just staying focused throughout the week. Having a plan, that's a big thing for me, setting a plan and then following that plan. So just having that discipline, like my father, my parents, installed in me at an early age, man, and it allows me to, make smart decisions, but have a good decision-making ability. And, it's a time for everything. And when it's time for me to hang with friends or see family, we'll do that. But when it's ball, I'm all about ball, man. And that's the main thing. Keep the main thing the main thing.
Now, North Central is going to beat Warren Central this year, right?
Say that again.
I said North Central is going to beat Warren Central this year, right?
One more time. I couldn't hear you.
The streak is coming to an end, Juju. See, we could do that. I could ask the question 17 straight times, and it probably is like 5 shy of the number of times Warren's beaten North Central, right? We got to.
I'm sure you dreamed about that a lot of times, but I don't think it's happening this year.
Listen, people ask me how old I am. I say I'm so old that I was at North Central when they used to beat Warren Central in football, right? I mean, that tells you everything you need to know.
All right, I've been alive for 24 years. I've never seen it.
Thanks for the reminder. All right, let's get back to this real quick before we let you go. Juju Brent's joining us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. He is at Grand Park at Colts camp. In terms of this camp, the thing that you went into it and said to yourself, I need to make sure that I'm doing this, that I didn't do a year ago or I didn't realize a year ago, so I'm more conscientious of it. That answer is what?
It for me is just continue to learn how to be a pro, staying on top of my body. That was the main thing. I feel like I had a good plan in college, but the league is a whole different level. So you got to make sure you have a plan. Continue to be a pro off the field as well as on the field, obviously. But I would say that's a big thing. It's a bigger adjustment. So just learning what works for me. I'm learning for guys like different vets, like Kenny Moore, guys in my back end, even guys on the offensive field, like on the offensive side, Quentin Nelson, a guy who I just see he's constantly just working. So just learning from them, learning how to take care of my body has been a big adjustment, but it's been good so far.
Year number 2 for Juju Brents. Year number 25, presumably, for Warren Central's dominance in high school football. We'll see if the two of them, how they go over the course of the year. Juju, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Had fun talking to you periodically over the course of last year. Look forward to doing that again this year, but we'll let you get back to work out in Grand Park, and certainly appreciate the time today.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you guys having me on, man. Take care.
All right, there you go. Juju Brents, cornerback for the Indianapolis Colts on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. James Boyd going to join us later in the program. Pat Knight, by the way, 2 o'clock today. Marion has an interesting schedule that they put together for their preseason in basketball, and Pat Knight's going to walk some familiar areas. We'll talk about that with him as well. As we roll along on Hump Day Wednesday here, it's Corey & Company on the Fan. opening lyrics to a song, is that in the that cracks the top 100 all time, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, I don't mean in the lyrics itself, but just like the delivery of it, right?
Yes.
The boom, here we go.
Yes.
Immediately know what song it is. Eddie, that must mean that you have tickets to give away, right?
We have tickets to give away, Jake.
Well, you're the one that seems to have lately taken control and possession of the entire manner in which we're doing so, right? Which you have determined for this particular installment of our giveaway, you were going to do so in what fashion?
I don't know. You're the host. You can decide that fashion.
It's okay.
I just told you we have tickets to give away here.
Phone lines already lighting up. Does that mean that people are, line jumping is not a sport at Kings Island, right?
If you've got the fast pass, it is.
That is the way to go. I'm telling you what, so many things. I discovered, like in traveling, for example, Jimmy, you've done this. I mean, when you were in London, some of the different sightseeing things that you do, whenever you buy the package for it, it always has the additional, it's usually like $12 or something for the skip the line.
Yes.
That is the greatest.
Yep.
The biggest travel tip that I can give people, quite simply, is you pay for the skip the line. Viator, I think, Viator, that's like the online group that sells a lot of those things. Literally the greatest thing ever.
If you were going somewhere,
and it's like $12 more. It's not like it's outrageous.
I don't care if you're going to a sightseeing tour in Ireland or if you were at Walt Disney World. If you've already spent the money to make that trip happen, and you can spend an extra $12 to $20 to not have to wait in long, you do it.
It's worth its weight in gold, right?
Yes.
Now, when I do the sightseeing thing in Ireland, and I'm thinking about this, I think I'm going to do the whole thing. When I'm in Ireland, which is coming up here in a couple of months, I'm going to do that voice the entire time. What do you think? You think people will like it?
I think you should find the most.
Pardon me, matey.
I think
You know what? I might be able to get myself a nice cup of coffee.
I think you should find the most rough-looking pub in Ireland. Try that. Order a pint of Guinness and see where it gets you.
I just wanted to know if I could get a pint, maybe, and if you don't mind putting yourself a bit of a shamrock in the foam. It's a wonderful accent, and I do it so well and authentic. I think, to be honest with you, if I go over there and do that, people are going to say to themselves, how does that guy not have red hair? They're going to look for the little red beard and the hat, the whole deal, right?
I think they'll be very taken aback. Why is this leprechaun so massive? I think they'll be very, very confused.
Why don't you go out and meet my gal, Shannon? I mean, come on. Now, how long do you think Shannon will last on the trip if I'm doing that?
What time's takeoff?
We land on a Wednesday, heading home on Thursday, right?
You think they'll ask you if you have any Lucky Charms?
Oh, I mean, that's a given with that voice, right? By the way, Lucky Charms now, they sell just the marshmallows?
I have heard that, yeah.
They have a different one you can buy that's just the marshmallows, but I think that's like a seasonal promotional thing, like the Frankenberry and Booberry and that kind of thing. All right, 239-1070 is the telephone number. We have tickets to give away for Three Dog Night. Eddie, could you give us the specifics on when this is taking place or where?
It is taking place Friday, August 2nd, so a week. Or no, actually not a week. We're a couple days away from that. 2 days from now at the Indiana State Fair. 7:30 post-meridian.
This is VIP tickets for the free stage, right?
That is right. Premier access tickets, Jake.
Now, the number is 239-1070.
It does not come with a chai tea.
You could probably get one over there, right?
I don't know.
Now, people that are calling in, are we going to do Get to Know Your Listener for the tickets at 239-1070? Are we just going to randomly give these away? Is there a method of which we're doing this?
Jake,
we got to make sure that we're not getting people
so we
that
can
skip
do
the line.
whatever you feel necessary. I know we've done Get to Know Your Listener typically on Mondays through Thursdays. Fridays typically reserved for trivia.
I get worried when this happens because then I get self-conscious that it means that there must not be anybody listening to this program, which would be very understandable. But then I forget the fact that we're on a delay. So when I'm saying the number out to people
right
at 239-1070 and there's a hesitancy before the lines light up.
Well, you know what might have happened as well?
I get self-conscious. I'm very self-conscious.
Well, to try to reassure that self-confidence for you, we've done those studies, and the studies do so well with the kids, and the kids are back in school now. So perhaps
that's a good part of it.
Maybe that's what it is.
That's
there
a big
are
part
some
of it
kids that
indeed.
have not returned to school, though. We could
true.
have some
So
kids listening.
What schools are back? Warren Township is back.
Decatur Central went back, I believe, on Tuesday, so yesterday.
Crazy. Washington Township, I think, is back.
Beech Grove went back last week.
And I get it. I mean, you get 2 weeks in the fall. I mean, it pays itself off. I understand, but to me, I want the city pools and the sounds of kids playing and running and whatever else. I want that all the way through August. I just do. I'm old-fashioned
I'm with you
in that regard. All right, line number 5. Let's go roulette style, Eddie. We won't even do trivia style. You're on the air, line number 5, roulette style. This is who?
Mike.
Mike, you sound choked up over the fact that you may be headed to the State Fair to see Three Dog Night. Mike, I appreciate you calling. Have you called the program before?
One time.
One time. Okay, and Mike, do you remember what the subject matter was of that phone call?
It was a contest.
Did you win, Mike?
You asked questions. There was two of us on. You asked questions. I won tickets to the Marion County Fair.
Heck
Nice.
yeah, okay. Fair enough. So you're a fair-going guy, Mike, right?
I am.
Okay, now, Mike, if you don't mind me asking, we're going to play another round of not get to know, but get reacquainted with your listener. We've had a lot of success with this, and as Jimmy mentioned, kids love it in particular. Mike, are you an Indianapolis native?
I am.
Okay, and when you were in high school, Mike, who was your rival high school? Who was the high school that you most disliked athletically?
Manual was our rival.
Okay, so does that mean you would have been – I'm going to guess. I've got probably 3 guesses I could make here. My first guess is going to be that you went to Howe High School.
Nope.
Did you go to an IP?
It wasn't a city. It wasn't a city school.
Okay. Southport?
Yes.
Okay. And if you don't mind me asking what year you graduated, Mike, what year were you a Cardinal senior?
1965.
Okay, so would you have been, and I ask this of anybody with Southport, obviously Louis Dampier and Robin Miller, the two guys, I'm guessing you kind of bridged between the two of them. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Louis was about 3 years older, and Robin was a year behind.
Robin was the best, man. Well, Louis Dampier, obviously a darn good player, too. The all-time leading scorer in ABA history, by the way, Mike. Lastly, Mike, if you don't mind me asking this, other than calling in to win prizes on this show, which we're very happy that you do, if you could give a constructive criticism towards this show, what would it be?
I just kind of like everything about it. You're pretty knowledgeable about every sport, and I learn a lot from you guys.
Well, Mike, you know what? I appreciate it. That was a good diplomatic answer, but it was one that we like. And for that reason, Mike, I'm thrilled and happy to be able to say that I hope you enjoy Three Dog Night with the VIP tickets at the State Fair and be able to walk around the State Fair, maybe get an elephant ear or an ear of corn. Eddie will get your information, and we will send you on about the way. Have a good weekend, all right, Mike, even though obviously we're midway through the week.
Thanks. You do the same.
All right, that's Mike. Eddie will put him on hold. And James Boyd, by the way, going to join us just a couple minutes. I think I'm seeing more from more places, Jimmy, that there is one Colt that it appears as though had a really good day today at camp. Now, one good day does not a good season make, but it's a player that we have talked a lot about. It's a player that I think there's a lot of expectation for a breakout year. It's a player that probably has had to block out a lot of noise, and maybe those little foam things they put on the helmet has been able to allow him to do that. But good day today, and we'll find out whether or not James Boyd agrees with that assumption, and we'll tell you what player we're talking about as well. When James Boyd of The Athletic joins us coming up on the other side, Pat Knight at 2 o'clock on this Wednesday edition of Aquarian Company. 1 o'clock hour underway. James Boyd, of course, with The Athletic, covering the Colts, among the other sports that he dips into from time to time, joins us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. James, I will get right to the subject matter at hand, and that is that several who have been out at Colts camp so far this week said that today was the best practice day so far. One practice does not a season make, but it certainly trends towards the right direction for Alec Pierce. Do you concur with that observation?
Yes, he was really good today, had a really great touchdown. The side of the field, he caught one from Joe Flacco, contorted his body in traffic, caught it over two people, and it was a really great catch. But he's had some other plays as well. Caught a touchdown pass on the first day of camp from Anthony Richardson in 11-on-11. And I would say so far he's been better than A.D. Mitchell as far as the wide receiver 3 spot, which isn't a surprise to me at all.
Do you think that we're going to get clarity in the coming weeks, or do you think it's still until week 1 before we figure out what Alec Pierce's role is? Because I'm with you, James, whether it's a position battle or not, the conversation are going to be situationally, snap count distribution, overall role, what winds up happening to differentiate A.D. Mitchell from Alec Pierce. Just focusing on Pierce, how long before we know, regardless of status compared to A.D. Mitchell, just Alec Pierce, how long before we know what his role is for this team?
I think his role is pretty clear. He's a possession catcher. He's a down-the-field threat. He's shown that throughout camp so far. Today was the biggest day where it all kind of came together. But he's had other plays as well. And I know you said, not in comparison to AD, but how could you not? I mean, that's the conversation. I just think that the role is clearly defined right now for him to be that deep threat, that wide receiver 3, and he's forcing them to basically say, I know you brought in A.D. Mitchell, but not so fast.
The reason I ask that like that, James, and maybe you can verify this if this is the case. I know Nate Atkins had sent this out yesterday during camp as well, but the reason I try to separate now is because it would appear that from a snap count standpoint or a situation standpoint at the X spot or at that third receiver spot that this might wind up being situational for both of them versus let's say there's 50 snaps, it could be closer to 25-25 than it could 30-20. I'm just giving an example there, but are you seeing it the same way that maybe they are used just in different situations versus this being a true competition at the position?
I think it's a true competition. I do think that they're
hang on, James.
You
didn't just flush a toilet, did you? I want to make sure that we're clear here. You're going through a car wash, right?
I had one of those gators that they drive. The guy was like cleaning up trash, and he drove it right past me as I was getting ready to talk. So sorry about that.
No worries. Believe you me, no reason to apologize that's what that was. But anyway, go ahead with the answer. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I mean, I love you guys, but I try not to be on the toilet when I talk to you. But I will. I'll say that. I get all the hype with A.D. Mitchell, right? And I understand he's going to get reps because he's that talented. But even situationally, I just think that Alec Pierce, when you look at 11-on-11, like the realest football you can get at this point in the season, he's been the better player in pretty much every scenario, to be honest with you. I know A.D. Mitchell's made some really great plays and one-on-one drills and some really short area red zone drills. He had some touchdown catches today with Joe Flacco in the twos and the second stringers, but I think that there is a considerable gap between the two players right now, to be quite honest. I think that Alec is in a considerable lead, I guess, for the wide receiver 3 spot, which, again, isn't a surprise to me because I think that AD just has a lot to learn with the offense and things like that. So they'll continue to give him reps. He's not going to go to the bench and just sit there and wither away, but I do think that, Alec is going to get more reps, now and obviously throughout the season unless something changes drastically.
I think there was some question marks, James. James Boyd, our guest from The Athletic, he's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. With A.D. Mitchell, who has been clearly, the talk of from the time he was drafted. So many people have been thirsting for a game-changing receiver. There was question about him, I guess, through the process, just in the fact that he'd played at multiple schools or that his skill set didn't necessarily equate to huge stats at the college level. Has there been any reason from a personality or approach standpoint to have concern at all about him in terms of since the time he has been a Colt?
No, I don't think so. I think he's been, the consummate pro. He's a fiery dude, obviously. That's what you like. But remember when we talked to the interactions I've had with him personally with the media, he seems like he has a good head on his shoulders. And I can only go based off what I see somebody portraying to me or how they interact with me and others around them. So what I've seen so far, man, he's given them no issue. And it seems like everybody loves him, and he brings a good energy, a good competitive spirit to practice. There's a lot of joy that he plays the game with, but there's a lot of, anger and alpha in him as well.
Here's a dumb question. You mentioned the 11 on 11s. And, that's obviously the better simulation because that's what you are going with in a regular game situation. But if you are going through like 7-on-7s, for example, other than just the simulation of the fact that it's the full field and the full crowded nature, if you will, of the field, are there things in a 7-on-7 that allow for a guy to show a skill that is just not reality? In other words, other than just the numbers of 4 different people on the field, what is the main difference on why 11 on 11 is the true measuring stick, aside from the obvious? Is that the dumbest question you've ever been asked?
I don't think it's dumb at all. I think a lot of it when it comes to 7-on-7 versus 11 on 11.
Because truly it's one-on-one. I guess that's my point, right? When you're talking about a receiver getting himself open, it's one-on-one at that point. So what difference does it make whether there's 6 or 10 guys around him?
I think a lot of it is just timing. That's usually when it comes to play. Like when they have the 7-on-7 drills, they have a bunch of trainers or staffers holding up these big like foam sticks or whatever, and that's not a real defender. Whereas in 11 on 11, you're getting a little bit more pass rush, so you have to kind of be a little bit on your P's and Q's better because the timing could be off. Whereas in 7-on-7, you got no pressure. Every throw is a great throw. Every route's a great route because you're not worried about anybody disrupting that timing up front. And again, I think that A.D. Mitchell's had some moments, and certainly the last couple of days he's come on a little bit more. He's just been quieter than maybe some have expected. But I'm just saying, being here every day, don't panic. It's just he has to learn. And I think that people kind of discredited their transition from going from being, a pretty good wide receiver in college to now joining the NFL, and you're not named Marvin Harrison Jr. or Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors. Like sometimes it takes a little bit more time.
We talk so much, James, about these 2 receivers and Michael Pittman and Josh Downs. Reality is over the course of a season, and oftentimes it happens in some road game on a primetime Thursday night or Monday night game. The Colts go on the road. They're an underdog. They're playing in a hostile environment, and they eke out some surprising win, and there is some player that comes out of nowhere and has a great game for them. And you're like, man, this guy, and then he becomes the story for a week. Give me a guy at the receiver depth chart that we're not talking about because he's not one of those names I just mentioned, but is quietly having himself an efficient camp and looks like he could be a reserve-type player that if his number's called can be a contributor in the passing game this year.
I love this question, Jay, because I feel like you just wrote my story for today. I'm actually working on this very subject right now. I think Anthony Gould, the rookie out of Oregon State, has had some moments throughout camp so far. He's proven to be, to me, a decent deep threat. He's had a pretty good connection with Joe Flacco. And I asked Jim Bob Cooter about it today, the Colts offensive coordinator, and he said, he's kind of forcing our hands to maybe give him a couple of looks with the first unit or give him a couple of looks with the starters. And so they haven't happened yet, but I think that he has shown the ability that, like you said, it could come a week where he has 2 or 3 big catches and changes the game and becomes a hero for the week. So that's a guy to keep an eye on. I know he got drafted primarily for his kickoff return, punt return prowess, but he also has shown some ability to at least get some separation down the field. And at the very least, if he gets down the field and forces you to consider him, that opens things up underneath for other guys like Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, etc.
Speaking of content on the Colts beat, you can, of course, follow James on Twitter at RomeoVilleKid. And, of course, he covers the Colts for The Athletic. Subscribe there to get all his work throughout the Colts season. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line, does James Boyd. James, one of your more recent stories had the headline of, without Samson Ebukam, Colts need Laiatu Latu to be a force right away. He looks up to the challenge. You've highlighted as well your observation at camp, what the rookie defensive end has been able to do so far in the early days up at Grand Park. When you say being a force right away, does that mean that you think he would be starting opposite Kwity Paye out of the gate, or is this still a bring him along somewhat slowly, even though there's clearly a need for an impact pass rusher with Ebukam off the board?
Fun fact, Jimmy, I actually don't write all of my headlines. So when that one came out, I was like, all right, I guess that worked.
That's why editors get paid. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, so I guess that makes people click on it more.
I don't want to misrepresent you in that regard, James. I apologize.
Yeah,
I didn't think about it from that point.
Yeah, we get asked those questions. It's like, yeah, I guess that works for the headline. But I do think that with Laiatu, he is a force, and I thought he showed it the most yesterday, that first day of pads. He looked explosive, and obviously came at an opportune time. With Sampson going down, I wouldn't bet on him being the starting defensive end opposite of Quiddy Pay week one. We caught up with Gus Bradley today, and he said they were bringing him along slowly, but obviously that's going to change without Sampson. It's going to get expedited a bit more. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does develop into being a starter caliber defensive end or a every week starter, maybe at the a month or two into the season, because he is a really good player. And now it just becomes, okay, how quickly can you become a decent enough or sound enough run stopper? That way we can put you out there more, because when it comes to just pinning his ears back and going to get the quarterback, he can do that. And I think he's going to do that regardless of Sampson being healthy or not. I think that he is a 10-sack guy incoming as a rookie. But now it's like, can you give us 10 sacks, but also make sure you're not a liability in the run game?
The domino effect of losing a weapon like Ebukam up front is that you're now asking a guy like Latu or other depth pieces to step up in big spurts. I mean, that's Tyquan Lewis, whatever direction they decide to go with. That's now needed to provide more support to a unit that is expected in its own right to give support to the secondary. We talked to Juju Brents earlier today, and he stressed that the idea that room is young is a label, that there's a lot of experience, a lot of talent, a lot of hard workers, a lot of dogs, he put it, in that secondary room outside of himself and Kenny Moore. From the brief stints that you've seen so far in camp, do you share that same evaluation? Is there clearly a quicker step or a growth area for the younger pieces on the secondary so far at camp compared to last year?
I think so. I mean, I say that because a lot of guys look pretty good throughout camp. I know Darrell Baker Jr. had a pretty good camp last year, and obviously we saw how that turned out. Dallas Flowers had a good camp, and he ended up getting injured. So that was unfortunate. So I think that they do look a bit more comfortable, Juju and Jalen Jones in particular. But at the same time, I think that last starting spot is still, yet to be certified. I think Jalen Jones is probably the third starting cornerback, opposite of Juju, and obviously Keeney's going to be in the slot. But they got to show it, throughout the season. And I feel more comfortable about cornerback and maybe the competition there and the quote-unquote dogs that they have versus free safety, where now we're starting to see Ronnie Harrison Jr. get, some first-team reps. And that's like the biggest red flag to me, because I'm like, wait a second, this guy hasn't played free safety since high school, and now, you're throwing him in here, to compete for the starting job. So that's a bit more concerning to me than cornerback, but I do think they're taking a step forward. But now it's hard to tell, because it's like, I can say all these things right now throughout camp, but what do you look like when it gets, on Sundays you got to face real competition?
James Boyd is our guest. James, kind of a generic question, I guess, but give me a player that we've overlooked that you look at in either one of two ways. I mean, a guy that's kind of surprisingly struggling right now through camp, or somebody that, because they're not in a position that is one that we are focused on, is being overlooked in the fact that they actually so far are having a really good outing.
That's a good question. I think that Trey Sermon and Evan Hull have kind of done themselves pretty well the last couple of days. I think that Trey Sermon's pretty much got that backup running back spot solidified. I don't know if he will get, more volume, more snaps than Evan Hull or another running back. But I do think that if JT needs a breather and any like a bell cow running back, he'd be the first option. He's gotten a lot of reps with the ones and twos throughout the last couple of days. Like I said, Evan Hull looked pretty good. And then beyond that, I think in some senses, the offensive line, I would say that Matt Gonzalez, the lineman they drafted out of Pitt, he looked pretty good. He got some run with the twos, and obviously you don't want to see him starting the season because that means somebody got hurt, but it's the NFL. Guys get hurt, and obviously if someone were to go down, I think he's shown at least a couple of moments here or there that he can be relied upon. Not a sexy position, people want to hear about. But I will say you can't win if you can't block, and so he's shown some ability so far.
You mentioned Evan Hull at the running back position. You know, that's a guy that they drafted out of Northwestern. They were very high on him, and then he got hurt in his rookie campaign. Would they keep with active roster-wise, and I can't remember, James, off the top of my head, and, you know, I think we know now that Jonathan Taylor is going to be the bell cow because he's healthy and he's happy. But will they keep 3 active backs each week, or does that become one of those positions where it's like your last-minute, end-of-week thing where Evan Hull is kind of yo-yoed back and forth? Because he does seem to have a little bit more of a versatile skill set.
Yeah, I think that they could potentially keep 3 up, every week, mainly because, one goes down. You want to make sure you still have 2 more to go. You don't want to be too depleted. But I think 3 is a sweet spot for that room. And I think Evan Hull is a guy who could be kind of like that third down back, a pass catcher out of the backfield. He's a pretty good, blocker and pass protection. So he's someone I know is hungry to kind of prove himself too, because similar to, Anthony Richardson, he barely got to play as a rookie, and actually got to play only, I think, 8 snaps. And that was it. And so he wants to come out and solidify his role within the team, and I think he can do so. And I would say right now I would have him over Tyler Goodson on my depth chart. And obviously we saw Tyler get some run as like the third option at running back last year.
Colts beat writer for The Athletic, James Boyd, is our guest. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. James, has there been anything from a separation standpoint that has happened so far at camp in regards to that tight end room?
No. You know what? I just asked this question in the media room maybe like 15 minutes ago, because I was asking them, like, who's the best tight end right now for this team? And all of us are like looking at each other, waiting for the other one to give the answer. There has really not been that much separation, which can be kind of concerning. We talked to Mo Ali Cox today, and he gave us the whole spiel about how, they all can do different things, and they're all, pretty versatile, and that means they can make the offense more dynamic if they can do different things. But I'm like, I see your vision, but I also understand that sometimes when you have a bunch of guys who can do a couple of different things, and you don't have that one guy that can just take the reins and do a little bit of everything himself, that can be a hindrance more than it can be, something that helps you. So we'll see how it shakes out. But, yeah, right now, I couldn't even tell you, like, okay, who's going to be our starting, tight end and quote-unquote. Because right now it feels like it's based off of needs and schemes versus just overall this is our guy.
It's at a point.
Going, big to – go ahead, I'm sorry.
Is it at a point where, to that same end, James, there's not a clear, Jelani Woods is the one that's clearly getting the most snaps, or Mo Ali Cox is clearly getting the most snaps. When you say that it appears to be scheme-based or situational-based, it's not definable for you or any of the writers you spoke to about, hey, this guy's clearly dominating the snaps?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at. I think it's from the point we made about schemes and usage, but also just snaps in general. Because when they go to different looks in their offense and in the different sets, they rely on different things. So when they go heavy and they want to run, okay, Mo Ali Cox is in there, Drew Ogletree's in there. When they want a pass catcher or somebody that's pretty versatile, you got Colin Granson, you got Jelani Woods who can also go out there and make some plays. And, Will Mallory was out today, but he's another guy who can, pass catch. And so I haven't seen, to my eyes, someone who's like, okay, this guy's been out there a whole lot. I think that Mo, if I had to pick, probably has the most first-team reps, but even then it hasn't been to the point where it's just like he's getting so many and the other guys aren't getting that many at all. It's been pretty fluid.
James Boyd, when it comes to Anthony Richardson at this point, area that needs the more work for him, if either, and that is overthrowing in terms of his accuracy or just still learning timing in terms of when guys are open and when they're not?
I think it's probably overthrowing. We saw a couple of overthrows today. Even when they did one-on-one routes, a couple routes on air, actually, it wasn't even a defender. He kept throwing it too far deep. And it's like, we know you got an arm, but can you rein it back in sometimes? So I think that's probably his biggest thing. He seems to be pretty confident in where to go with the ball and when to go there with the ball. But, again, it's just making it all come together with your legs, your feet, your arm. And then when he does miss, he usually misses high.
Right. That's what I meant by overthrow, I guess. Right. His release point was such that he threw high a lot last year, but we didn't get enough body of work to know whether that had been worked out.
Yeah, and I would even say now, like, he's been kind of weird throughout camp every now and then. Like, he's had days where he's had, bad warm-ups, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And then he comes out there in 11-11 and kills it. I would say today he was probably, the least efficient he's been throughout camp. I think he was maybe, 7 of 12 or 7 of 11 passing with a few incompletions, no interceptions. But that's something he has to work through, and I think that is something people have to kind of accept with him. He's not going to be a super accurate passer overnight or even just over one off season. He's going to have days where he might be a little off, but that's when you have to bank on, him and his supposed to play to kind of offset some of the, discrepancies there.
Is there an area of surprising strength, be it offensively or defensively, that perhaps going into camp you might not have thought would be something that would pop off the page at you that actually has?
I wouldn't say I'm surprised by anything throughout the team so far, but I would say Julian Blackmon looks incredible. Like, I know this guy was brought back on a one-year deal, and I know he had a couple of suitors throughout the offseason. He could have went to any team in the NFL and really helped them. I truly believe that. He's been lights out throughout camp, and he's playing at this level right now, and if he can stay healthy, another guy who needs to stay healthy, if he can do that, he's going to be, I believe, one of the better strong safeties in the league because, man, it seems like every time a play needs to be made in that secondary, he is making that play.
James Boyd, our guest on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. The Colts today, yesterday they're in pads. Today they were back in, shells, if you want to call it that. And there's apparently a concerted effort to just, and I get it. You want to protect your players in terms of the physicality. Some would say that could lead to a propensity for injury once you get into full contact against other teams early in the year. The question I have for you, and maybe we don't know this because you're focused on the Colts, but is this the norm in today's NFL, and is this an NFLPA thing, or is this the Indianapolis Colts being more cautious than other franchises?
I think it's a little bit of both. I do think that the Colts are being a little bit more cautious than other franchises. That's definitely the case. And Shane Steichen talked about it. They've, researched it, 1,000 times over. It's not like he just made the decision on a whim. So they've researched it, but also this is just not how it used to be back in the day. Like, there are no more two-a-days. You're not going to see guys puking on the side, of the field. Like, all the stuff that you hear as a kid, you don't need no water. Like, you don't need to bend over to, catch your breath. Like, all that stuff is kind of, thrown out the window where now they've dialed it back to keep them fresher. And I think part of it, too, is understanding that you have a 17-game season to get through and possibly an 18-game season in the future. So I'm not too surprised to see them dial it back. And I can't say I'm too mad at it because it's been hot out here in Westfield. So a few less days under the sun, I can't complain.
James, I know you do not dabble in the degeneracy that I do, but hypothetically, if Team USA basketball was, say, I don't know, favored by 30 over South Sudan after they only beat them by a point in the showcase, what would be your overall thoughts on that type of gap between those two teams?
Yeah, I'm smashing the under on that because I just don't think this team they could probably go out there and win by 30, but I feel like they're stagnant at certain points. And it kind of takes like one of the superheroes being Kevin Durant or LeBron James, Steph Curry to get them over the hump. And so if one of those guys doesn't have like an all-time great game or like a really efficient game, I could see them winning by 12 or even single digits because it feels like, even the last game that they won, without Kevin Durant going supernova, they just weren't going to really have a fun time with Serbia. So we'll see what happens today.
Now, the other over-under is this. Tyrese Halliburton, 8 minutes played today. Over-under.
Oh, I'm slamming the under. That's been solidified. I was making this joke yesterday on JMV, the afternoon show, but I wanted to talk to him, and I was like, man, if I was over there in Paris, I would have been asking Steve Kerr, hey, what about Tyrese? Everyone's making this big fuss about this. They're not playing. I'm like, wait a second. Another All-NBA guy on your team not playing either, but no one cares about that one.
I know. And again, my hope is that I don't think this is the case, but that Tyrese Halliburton comes back and says, you know what, that was a great – and look, Tony E. said this to me yesterday. It's totally true. The last guy in a medical school class, you call him a doctor, right? The last guy off the bench is, assuming that they win a medal, is an Olympic medalist. I mean, you're still on an Olympic team representing the United States. But maybe Tyrese Halliburton comes back, who we all like and for all good reasons, but maybe he comes back and goes, you know what, maybe I should defend a little more. I don't know that that's going to be the case, but that's what I'm hoping they take out of it, right?
Yeah, I think that should be the case, but I also have been saying this a lot. He has to get in the best shape of his life if he wants to be a true two-way player or even somebody that's serviceable on defense, because I do think that he exhausts so much energy on offense to basically run the entire team that sometimes it can be hard to ask that player to go out there and do it again on the defensive end. I think when we see players like Michael Jordan, Dwayne Wade when I was watching him growing up, obviously LeBron James at a certain point, like these guys being first-team All-NBA and first-team All-Defense, that's really, really hard to do. I don't think Tyrese is ever going to be like a, all-world defender, but to be that great defender, it's not just like effort and focus. It's being in shape. So as much as he's in shape now, I think he has to really be in the best shape of his life. That way he cannot get fatigued. When you get fatigued, that's when you don't play defense, and you kind of, want to coast a little bit. So we'll see what happens, but I definitely think that this will challenge him because I can't remember the last time, he probably knows it better than me, he got a DNP, did not play, coach's decision. How are you a top 15 player in the world and you don't even get minutes in any game? I get it. It's the Olympics. But if I'm him, I think that's very personal.
At Romeoville Kid on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and, of course, The Athletic as well. James, appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Much appreciated, my guys.
All right, James Boyd joining us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line.
So are you saying the two paths for Tyrese Halliburton when he comes back from Paris are either become a better defender or go to med school?
That's right.
There's no in between.
I remember Alan Henderson, when Alan Henderson, when we were in college, it was like, Alan Henderson's going to med school if he doesn't play in the NBA, which, everybody knew he was going to be an NBA player.
Right.
And then he gets drafted in the first round of the NBA right on the outside of the lottery area. And, it was, there's a good chance he's going to go to medical school after his playing career's over. And then he plays in the NBA for, 13 years or something and racks up at that time $85 million, a lot of money. And, I remember running into him somewhere, and I'm like, hey, are you still going to med school? And he kind of looked at me like, what do you think? And he now has a very successful, bourbon and whiskey business, but a good dude. But, yeah, look, Halliburton, the Tatum situation, I think it came down to, with Jason Tatum, I think it came down to just rotations of things. You got to work Durant in. And with Halliburton, I think he fell victim to the fact that Derek White was brought in. And, again, the thing that you have to look at with an Olympic roster is what does a player bring to the table, to the offering, that makes them unique to the rest of the roster? And Halliburton is a wonderful player, don't get me wrong, and certainly merits being on that team. But he does help, I think, in pacing, in running the ball faster.
I think he's a slump buster at times, too. If they, at least during the small sample size of Showcase, Jake, whenever they went stale in that second unit, he helped revitalize.
Yeah, that's fair.
They haven't needed that the last couple of games.
Correct. But there are other players that can kind of do the same thing. Derek White, I think, just from a defensive standpoint, is Derek White a better basketball player than Tyrese Halliburton? You could argue that all day long, but he's better in the one area that clearly they felt they needed to bolster, and that was defensively.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of it. Tatum is a tremendous player, but he's a tremendous player at the same position as Jason Tatum may well be in terms of whatever position you want to list him as, a 3, whatever you want to put him. He's probably a top 5 player in the world who happens to be on the roster with the 4 guys in front of him, right? And right now he might be better than them, but I think the international play, all of it, there are just elements of it where the thing to me where other guys have emerged, the thing to me that is, and James mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about it, going into it, where he said Kevin Durant is going to be the guy that shots are going to go to him and he is going to lead them in scoring. And, so far he's correct. The thing that has been of interest to me is the fact that LeBron James very clearly is the alpha.
Yes.
Very clearly is the alpha. And I think we thought, I had mentioned the fact that I loved that Anthony Edwards had essentially said, I'm going to be the guy. Well, he may be in time, and I like the fact that he had that mentality because you had to have, it has to be known where the ball's going. But I think what we've learned in sport and what we learned in the game of basketball is it's one thing to say, I'm the alpha and the ball's going through me. It's another thing to not have to say it.
Yeah.
LeBron James didn't have to say it.
Yeah.
He shows up, and it's like I said when it came to Secretary at feeding time. All the other horses sat and waited to see what his mood was. And I think with LeBron James, that's what you've seen, is LeBron James has basically gone into it. I don't think he's been arrogant about it. But those guys know, okay, let's see where it goes through him first, and he sets the tone. And say what you want about him. I know people want to talk, but at 39 years old, for him to do that, there's an aura. There's an aura of a legacy and a greatness and an alpha about him.
Yeah, it's the whole age-old adage of whoever has to – a king that has to say he's the king isn't a real king, right?
Correct.
It's that type of deal. You say the same thing with leadership, any walk of life. And I kind of felt this way at the beginning. Like, if he is going to play at a turning back the clock, how is this guy doing this at 39 years old type of level, it's his team. There's been different Olympians, especially over the last 3 or 4 cycles, where it's been clear this is their team, and there's no doubt on the basketball side right now, it's LeBron James. And the best part about that is, even though he knows he's the alpha, he will always make the right play. I'm not saying they're going to win every time, whether it is him taking the shot or dishing it off to somebody else, he always makes the right play. He's the perfect embodiment of Team USA.
Jimmy Cook was clairvoyant, far more so than we even possibly anticipated, and he didn't even have the help of Robin the Genie. I'll explain next. Eddie, again, going with my Twitter survey question. You liked this one, didn't you, Eddie?
Yeah, you've had a couple good ones.
It's tough, right? Again, it makes me laugh because I say,
I was in the minority on this one.
in terms of your vote.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So my question on the X Twitter, which is the best, and then in capital letters I had to put, of these 4 listed, song from Prince, and then in parentheses again I had to say, I understand there are 4,000 from which to choose. But the 4 that I gave, the 4 Prince songs, and I wanted to know which one. Now, Cream was a #1 hit for Prince, but I don't think of Cream in the same category as the rest of these. The 4 that people had to choose from: When Doves Cry, Purple Rain, 1999, and Let's Go Crazy. You went with which one, Jimmy?
So, again, they are all great songs. That's the point of a Twitter poll like this. But you said best yesterday can mean your favorite. So I voted for my favorite, and that's 1999.
Okay. Eddie Garrison?
I voted for Purple Rain with the rest of the majority.
Correct. Well, yes, that's correct.
It was like 9% on 1999 or 5%
Now, here's a
when I
question.
last checked.
It's caught up a little bit, Jimmy.
Okay.
Here's a dumb question, and I'm going to revert back to my remedial math skills on this.
Ooh.
If Purple Rain is the leader but is still below 50%, can you say it's the majority?
I mean, it's
Now
received
you're putting
majority
us
of the votes, hasn't it?
But does majority have to mean more than the median, more than half?
No.
No.
Purple Rain is leading. I will not give the others up. I really like the song Let's Go Crazy, to be honest with you. What should be the next musical act I do for this question?
The Beatles.
Oh, man. The problem there is how do you limit that to four options, right?
I know.
I mean, I guess that's true of Prince, too.
I'm
So,
surprised
okay.
you didn't have a Little Red Corvette on this poll.
It's good. It's a good song. I mean, Kiss is another number one song by him, but does anybody, Raspberry Beret, does anybody put those in the same category?
I like Raspberry Beret.
That's a good song. Now, when it comes to being able to pick out the best of something, how about our guy Jimmy Cook here? The clairvoyant, and you hear the Jimmy Cook plays of the day each and every day just before the end of the show.
Is this where we can fast forward and get to the next break?
Brought to you by Greenfield Signs. There was a couple of months ago, I asked a question on the show, and Jimmy Cook saw the bright illumination of a neon sign from Greenfield Signs saying, "Here's your answer. Here's your answer." And he had to pick third. I asked the question at the beginning of the season based on teams
I didn't until now.
that were supposed to win the minority of their games. I'm using an incorrect term, I realize. When the baseball season began, we went on to one of our favorite sites, and I read off to you guys the teams that were selected to have an over-under in terms of total wins at 75 or below. So teams that, or maybe it was 85 or below, but teams that were expected to be below 500. The deal was that each of us got to pick one team with, if you were the winner amongst the three of us with the team with the best record, you got a six-pack of your choice. Eddie Garrison, the baseball enthusiast who sits around, he listens to games on the radio, he watches games on TV, he travels around the Midwest going to different leagues, he coaches, he plays it. Eddie Garrison, baseball aficionado and guru, had the first selection of all the teams that were possible in this grouping.
Yep.
He was given the number one overall selection.
Yep.
And he went straight Cleveland Cavaliers, taking Anthony Bennett with the first overall pick.
Yep.
The Miami Marlins.
Yep.
The 39-68 Miami Marlins.
They
just 26 games behind Philly in the NL East.
There was a graphic put out yesterday after the trade deadline, by the way.
Were they buyers or sellers, by the way, at 39 and 68?
Would you stop?
Okay,
You don't need
sorry,
to rub it in anymore.
Sorry, just asking.
There was a graphic put out yesterday from, I forget who it was, but it was a picture of them announcing they've clinched a playoff spot last season, and they X'd out all the players that were on that roster. There are like 5 players remaining, and 3 of them are hurt.
I had the second selection.
Isn't their payroll like less than? Isn't their payroll like less than $15 million right now, or something insane?
Well, probably because they traded everyone
That's my
away.
point.
Like if you look at their opening day starting lineup, I think only 2 guys are on the roster.
That's usually a sign things are not going well. I had the second overall pick. I went with city bias. Not the baseball, I shouldn't say enthusiast, but not as in-depth with it as Eddie, which you could tell because the team that I picked is only 22 games up on the one that Eddie picked. I went with the Brewers of Milwaukee, who right now find themselves 15 games over 500, and they are 6 games up on St. Louis in the National League Central, 9 games up on the Cincinnati Reds. 9 games. Now, right now, the best record in Major League Baseball, there are 2 teams that share that claim. One of them, the Philadelphia Phillies, aforementioned, have a 7.5-game lead in the NL East. The other team, how about the Guardians of Cleveland? 23. Now, here's the question, and this is an age-old debate that I'm going to bring up once again with you, Jimmy Cook, and I will let Eddie Garrison weigh in as well. I have a feeling that Mark Boyle would now, Mark Boyle, you said you had dinner with Mark last night, Eddie, right?
Yeah, I had dinner with MJB, Pat Boylan.
Okay, and he did not
Eddie
know
White.
that I work here. Is that right? He didn't know you work with me?
Yeah, he still thought you and Derek were still a thing on the radio.
Okay. Has anybody told him about what happened to John Kennedy in Dallas? Or just out of curiosity? Okay, so I have a feeling that Mark Boyle, who apparently is scanning right now, listening to financial radio over on 1260, wondering where I am.
You know, I too think of JFK and Jake Query in the same
That's
sentence
right.
often.
So here's the question: 65-42 for your Cleveland Guardians.
Yep.
They've played 107 games, right? So, how many games over 500 are they?
Oh, we do this. All right.
What did you say the record is? I'm
65-42. Are they 23 games over
Yes.
500?
Yes.
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 Are they?
Yes.
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 Jake, explain why they're not. But this is I just need to do the math.
I don't disagree with you, but what I'm saying is, in reality, at 65-42, so they've played 107 games. So it's hard because it's an odd number, but that would mean, let's say they play one more game here. That would mean to be a 500 team, they would have to have 54 wins. They would be 54-54 is 500. So they are 11 games over the marking of where they would need to be 500. So are they 11 games over 500 or 23 games? I tend to agree with you guys.
I always do 23
Basically,
because
you go by the win column or the loss column.
the loss column. You'd have to lose 23 games in a row to be 500.
Okay, that's fair.
That's how I've always done it.
Thank you, Eddie. That's a random brain drop. Is that what you're saying there?
Yes, because only you have asked this question.
So how did Mark not know? I mean, he follows me on the X Twitter. Does he have me muted?
Jake, I have no idea.
We're the flagship station of that carries his games. You're the producer for the two of us in common.
And if I'm being honest, even more open here, he didn't know that I produced this show. So take that as you wish.
I love Mark Boyle, but that takes me off the board in terms of him knowing my existence. So that's
he knew you.
Did he?
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, Jake, Bon Jovi for the next musical poll, please. That's a good one.
Yep.
That's really good.
Is that from my guy Alec, by the way? He's a big Bon Jovi guy.
That is.
I knew it.
That's your one friend, right?
I knew it.
What did he think you do during the day?
Hey, Jake, right now it would be a plurality, not a majority. See?
But I thought when you add, like, if it's two people, then sure, I get it. It's not a majority at that point. But if you're doing more than...
I would agree with what this person said. A majority requires one more than half of the total votes. Purple Rain currently has a plurality of the votes in the poll. I would agree with that. Now, does Mark know that you work in radio, Eddie?
He does.
Okay. Does he know who else is on the station?
Yes.
So he asked what you've been up to these days, and you said, well, I'm the producer for Query and Company, and he said, well, no, he does a show with the little guy over on the other station. That's what happened?
No, I won't fully indulge on how this conversation came up.
Was alcohol involved?
No.
Okay.
Sour Patch Watermelon?
No.
Okay, so go ahead. Proceed.
Proceed what?
You said you won't divulge exactly, but, and then it sounded like you were about to say something.
I didn't say but. There's no but.
Okay. Now, should I be offended by this?
No.
I don't think so.
You don't think I should be offended?
No.
Are you offended?
I'm not am I offended? Here's the thing. Like, I like Mark. I consider Mark a buddy of mine. And I talk to him with, frequency is probably the wrong word, but fairly often. I think here's the thing that's unique. Since the time that I've been doing this show, Mark had family in town, and I appreciated this, and called me and wanted to know if I could show the family around the Speedway, and he came along with us, and we had a great time.
That's
It was
cool.
very fun. But in the course of that conversation, I'm under the assumption that what I do regularly Monday through Friday had to have come up in conversation.
You don't think that it was just a given that you were just the tour guide at the Speedway? you don't think that's what he thought? You're just giving
That's entirely
free
possible.
tours?
That's entirely possible. Do you know Jake Query? Yeah, he gives tours out at the Speedway. Nice guy. So he knew that I guess this would actually be the thing that's more interesting about it. He knew that I work on the Indy 500 broadcast, but didn't know that I do a radio show on the station that's the flagship for the games that he's calling.
Yep.
That's odd, is it not?
I mean,
Look who we're talking about here.
Because we're in the trenches every day.
He would even
here,
agree to that, right?
Yeah.
Because we're in the trenches every day here. Yes, I would think it's odd. But if I'm like an outside perspective, and maybe I'm, because he's so dedicated and focused with the Pacers that maybe you don't think about the programming that's on the regular. I don't know. I mean, I think it is plausible. Like, I wouldn't take it as a slight. I would just take it as
I'd like
the
people to
day-to-day
tell
of
me
life.
whether or not I'm not offended by it. I'm surprised, though. Are people surprised by that? That's what I'd like to know. They have my number. They can text me. Yes, just simply a yes or no. They're either surprised or not surprised that he wouldn't know that. And I know, listen, there's
I'm more
nobody.
surprised he didn't know Eddie produced on the Fan outside
There is
of the Pacers.
nobody more aware than I of the snow globe in which we all lived. And no matter what walk of life you're talking about, local TV news is a good example. When I worked in local TV news, you are convinced, like, oh, man, we got a soundbite that nobody else got. We got an interview nobody else got. And then you realize the only people that notice or care are you or the other people at TV stations. That's it, right? And you get caught up in your own echo chamber. And we certainly are guilty of that. I'm guilty of it, for sure. It's what drives you to an extent, the competition, the competitive nature of it. But I try to be realistic about, I am routinely stunned when I go out in the general public and somebody comes up to me. I'm very appreciative of it, but I'm always surprised by it. Number one, I have no idea how people know what I look like. And number two, I just don't ever know how many people are listening.
There is a live stream.
But
Jake.
that is
you
one.
are on camera.
I understand. I mean, and but that said,
Jake just gave a very overdramatic grin to the camera for the audio audience.
That said,
Visual.
I would just think that would be one of the people that kind of is in the same snow globe. That's all. Pat Knight, by the way, going to join us in 13 minutes.
The term majority means more than half. So the listener that wrote in there was correct. You would need more than half of the vote for it to be.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Now, if we do Bon Jovi, the only problem with Bon Jovi is, isn't everyone going to vote for Living on a Prayer? It's listed as the number one song of the 80s.
Don't put it on the poll then, Jake. Come on.
Don't you have
It's
to?
the easiest solution here.
Is there a line where the act, artist, or band is so big that you have to phrase the poll instead of best signature song?
Well,
Would that then create a majority?
I've done signature song a billion times for bands, though.
Okay.
And that...
Because I'm with you. If you put best for the Beatles, you're going to get 20 people for Hey Jude,
What's the signature song of Michael Jackson? To me, this is a fascinating question because his most iconic. There are two. The Michael Jackson Thriller video is a game-changing, defining thing, and the name of and that's eponymous to the album. But you could make the argument that where he became the biggest superstar in the world was when he moonwalked at the Apollo, doing Billie Jean. And I personally think Billie Jean might be it's hard to say though, because Thriller, everything that was attached to the song, the video and the album title, it would be Thriller. But you never necessarily saw people walking along singing Thriller. But Billie Jean, the second that the opening beat happens.
Yeah.
Everyone, like,
there's also the seasonal aspect of it, and by that I mean every year around fall, around Halloween, Thriller is going to get reintroduced to younger audiences, to the point that you've asked that question. If you stop somebody randomly at the airport and you ask them a question, you have to encompass all age demographics at that point. Thriller is going to have, I would think, more inherent replay value because you're guaranteed to hear it at least once a year.
Here's the best way to summarize this, in my opinion, this predicament when it comes to the Michael Jackson aspect. If you were to walk up to 1,000 people and say, I'm going to give you an artist and you tell me the first song that pops to mind, and you say Michael Jackson, I think Thriller might get the most votes just because of the name of the album and the video. But if you play the opening beat of a song and say name the artist, Billie Jean would have a faster reaction time of answer of Michael Jackson than any other song, in my opinion, that he does, including Thriller.
Is it because there's no creaky door at the beginning? Because it does take a minute for Thriller to get
Thriller comes on,
like once it gets there, but it's preceded by that creaky door and the slow build up.
The musical aspect of it.
Yeah.
If you just went with Donna, but I just think the Billie Jean, automatically people, come on, man. Hold on. You got to stand up and do the whole thing, right? And then you do and I'm a terrible dancer,
sure.
But, and then you do the whole movement. I mean, like when you think of Michael Jackson's signature moves and aura, it's this for sure, right?
Yes, if you're encompassing him, like,
and if you ever see a guy lighting up sidewalks as he walks, you automatically think.
Eddie, can I get, if possible, skip to that first part of Thriller, not the build up to it?
It's hard to argue what you're saying for sure when you hear that, right? Dun-dun, dun-dun, yeah, I mean.
Boom, boom, boom.
But do you sing along to Thriller though? When you hear the Billie Jean thing,
I can't hit MJ high notes, but yes, I would think so.
I think this song, though, is as much known for Vincent Price as Michael Jackson.
That's fair.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's great. Don't get me wrong. I just think this encompasses and brings to life more. Ola Ray. Do you know who Ola Ray is? Either one of you guys?
It's close to midnight.
Oh, it's great.
I mean, I think you sing along to it too, right? Yeah.
Who's Ola Ray? Jimmy, go ahead. Go.
Don't have it.
Ola Ray is the former Playboy Playmate that stars as his girlfriend in the music video. So there's so many aspects to it that go along with it. The Beatles is a good one. Maybe I'll do the Beatles.
The Stones?
If we were taking a guess on the Beatles, though, there's not going to be I don't think there'll be a majority there. I think that you're going to have too much popularity with them, being what they are, that it would be a plurality like Prince was. I don't think you're going to find a true majority.
Okay.
There.
Now, this is according to one of the downloading, whatever it is. Somebody sent me a screen grab. Total downloads.
Screen grab. Nice.
What?
Screen grab. I just don't hear that one used a lot.
What should I say?
Screenshot.
Okay. Screenshot. Somebody sent me a screenshot.
Screen grab is correct, by the way. I don't think he was coming at you saying, "Oh, Jake, that's weird to say that." It's just.
Well, I'm old. I know. Most downloads for a Michael Jackson song. You ready?
Yeah.
Smooth Criminal, 4th.
Ooh.
Rock With You, 3rd. Beat It, 2nd. At 1,160,000.
Yep.
No, 1 billion. 1,160,317,000. Number one overall, 1,814,400,000. 31,976. Billie Jean.
Yeah.
I guess that
I think downloads is different though.
I mean, look, when you're the king of pop, like it's hit after hit after hit. Like I'm not gonna. You're fighting in the nuance of his entire discography, right? Like I wouldn't fight you on Billie Jean. It's as bob your head, as just fun of a song, just overall high levels of enjoyability there. I'm not gonna fight you on that.
By the way, my buddy Jason says, "Hey, don't bash us IMS tour guides." I didn't at all. I love it. I love the fact if you take a tour of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the bus that they had me voice it. It's one of the, and Jason's the guy that facilitated that. One of the biggest honors I can think of. I'm just saying, I think that's what Mark thinks I do for a living.
Especially if he went on a separate tour and he heard your voice over the bus, he must be like, "Man, this query guy,
guy's everywhere."
He's high up the ranks of the tours here."
Beat It is also iconic, several people say. That is true. It does have Eddie Van Halen. I get that. That's fair.
Yeah.
That is definitely fair. But I think it's Billie Jean. Pat Knight is the new head basketball coach at Marion University. That we know. We've had him on the program since that news came out. But wanted to talk to him for a couple of different reasons. Number one, they have an interesting team added to the Marion preseason basketball schedule. And number two, in doing that, Pat is leaving his role as scout for the Pacers, and he is moving back from Las Vegas where he was living, which means I presume he saw some of summer camp, so might be able to get some perspective on that as well, and he will join us next. That JMV just did, was that done by the David Seville that puts together the Chipmunks? Am I the only one that thought JMV sounded a little bit accelerated in the way he was talking?
It could have been. Could have also been him just talking really fast.
How'd they have the budget for Alvin?
That's impressive, right? Joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line, making a return visit to the program since being announced as the new head basketball coach at Marion University. And we found out that on November the 1st, he's going to be returning to his old stomping grounds as Marion will have an exhibition and season opener taking on Indiana University. Pat Knight joins us on the program. Pat, how are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
We can't complain. It's a great time of year, right? And right now, I guess in terms of basketball, everybody's undefeated. But you've been busy in just putting everything together, moving back from where you were living as a Pacer scout and now tackling this new job. So I wanted to catch up to just kind of get an overview of the things that you've kind of been able to put together or do since becoming the head basketball coach at Marion. So since we talked last, what things have you been doing to kind of put your footprint on the program?
Well, first of all, we had to figure out our roster. And so that took a while. Just, I had to track down numbers. First, the players returning. Then we had to figure out who they signed. And at the NAIA level, you have scholarships, but it's more of like a salary cap situation that you have to stay under. And so we had to figure out how much money certain kids were offered, what we had from a cap standpoint to sign more players. And so that was probably the thing that took the longest. And so, long story short, we got 7 out of the 10 kids returning and adding 7 new ones. And so our roster's finally done at 14. Then we found out you can schedule 10 pre-conference games. We were still missing 5, so we had to fill that up. So we had to find 5 games. And we were finally able to do that and finish that up about 2 weeks ago. So we finally got the schedule done. And then we had some issues with camp. And so we weren't able to have kids camp. So we're going to have an elite camp in September and then a golf event in October. So we got those done. And now I'm actually back in Las Vegas packing up my house.
So other than that, everything's going great, right?
Well, and then I had to mess with my dad's estate, if you want to add more to it, and get appraisers and stuff to come in on that, on top of that. So just add all that stuff together. It's just been smooth sailing.
Well, speaking of your dad, and I mean, obviously that is synonymous with Indiana. So the date going into Assembly Hall, and I know it's not unprecedented for Marion and Indiana to have an exhibition, but for you to go into Assembly Hall and take your guys in there to coach against Indiana, will that be weird for you?
Yeah, a little bit, because I've always been on the other side of it, But, just from the standpoint of, I haven't seen a game there since we got fired. Even when my dad came back, we weren't in the stands. We were in a practice court, just waiting to bring them out at halftime. So, yeah, it'll be kind of strange going back first time really for a game. And actually I'll be coaching, against Indiana. So, but, from just a standpoint for my team, the history, going to play in a great arena in front of those fans and, against a top flight program. Plus, we get paid to go down there. It's a good thing for our school to get some money in the athletic budget and everything. And so overall, I was really excited when I saw it when I took the job, and I was hoping it'd continue. But of course, I heard from Scott Dolson right away when I got the job, and Woody, and we want to continue, doing this exhibition game each year.
So with that, Pat, Steve Downing, obviously the athletic director at Marion as well. I'm an IU guy. So was that one of those that's basically Steve Downing and Scott Dolson talking about that, or did you kind of lobby for that, if you will, or did you just kind of sign off on it? I mean, how was the process itself?
Steve's the one that got this going. They've been doing it for the last couple of years. And so it was good. It was already in place, but I think maybe with both of us, we might have been, and I don't know the logistics, but with the two of us together, we might have been able to get Dolson to give us a little bit more money, since there's 2 ex-IU guys at Marion now for the game. So that'd probably be only difference, but they already had it in place. And so we just want to continue it. And I think it makes it even more, not better, but more fun from a standpoint. It's not just Steve involved. Now you got myself involved, 2 ex-players, that played for my dad going back there.
Pat Knight is our guest, head coach of Marion basketball. Pat, I know Jake already asked you what it'll be like to be back in Assembly Hall, and I know this has been a whirlwind of a last 365 days and counting for you, given the passing of your father. But if I can read well, which isn't always the case, despite the fact that I work in communications, but is it not a year to the day of Coach Knight's passing that exhibition is going to take place? And if I'm right on that, obviously you'll be focused on your group getting a win there and improving, but what's the right word to describe that in terms of that feeling if I'm right on those days?
Oh, shoot, I didn't even know that. I didn't even pay attention. Yeah, you're right. Oh, man, I didn't even pay attention to that because I've been involved with everything.
Sure.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that puts a little more emphasis on it, I guess, and probably make it a little more of an emotional thing going back that day. And, man, I'm glad you told me. Honest to God, I'd have gone through probably for the next month not realizing that. So
glad I could help.
Yeah, you put me on the spot, man. Like Jake would tell you, I'm usually not speechless, but no, it'll just make it, more special. Not just for myself, but Mike Woodson and Dolson, all of us that were affected by my dad. And but wow, that it's actually kind of cool in a way if you think about it. Because I was actually just thinking about his birthday. Comes up in October. That'll probably be more emotional, than the day of the passing. And but now, I don't know. The day of the passing will probably will even mean more now that we're actually playing on that date. So. Yeah, shoot. Thanks for warning me.
No problem.
Pat, has it been hard? I mean, you talked about just obviously I'm sure just from the estate itself and everything that comes with that. And I know that obviously you have your mom and you're and Karen, your stepmother. I mean, there are other people around, but has it been hard to navigate through all that, especially with kind of the life changes that are taking place?
Yeah, especially going through like the memorabilia stuff coming across. Actually, I was reorganizing stuff here in Vegas. Just we're packing and coming across just old fishing pictures and everything, and so that's when it kind of hits you. You start seeing these pictures of all the good times we had together growing up, and then recently because we still fished until about a year and a half before he passed. Even with the Alzheimer's, he was still able to sling the fly rod. And so just that's kind of the hard part coming across items, because you usually have that stuff, not buried, but, at away. And then you want to look at it when you want to. But I've kind of had to go through the stuff now just from the state standpoint. And, at times, but mostly it's, great memories and just, it makes me feel proud, that he was my dad and all the times we spent together. And but I'm fortunate enough, I got a great wife I can talk to. I got other players, teammates, that I've ran into a lot. I mean, guys I haven't seen like 20 years that I played with, being back in Indiana, and we just start telling coaches, stories about coach and everything. So that's really helped, just being around, guys that have been through it just like myself. And like I actually just ran into Charlie Miller, who I played with my senior year when he was a freshman, when I went to Indianapolis Airport to fly back to Vegas. We sat down, because our flights were delayed for probably a half hour, just telling stories about coach. So just being around my old teammates and the old managers, they've helped the process a lot.
What's Charlie Miller doing now, by the way? Is he still involved in basketball?
Yeah, he's got a major academy down in Dallas, and he goes around speaking to kids, and he actually had just was hired to put on a camp up at Fisher's, and so he's done really well. And we talked. He kind of was thinking about the coaching aspect, but then he really liked the developmental part, just developing kids, and so he started his own academy down there in Dallas, and has done really well. And so he's still involved in the game, but he just wanted to be more a part of the development part. But it's pretty much what he says. Everything he's teaching these kids is everything we learned, playing for my dad.
Pat Knight is our guest on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. He is the new head basketball coach at Marian University. Pat, on your staff, you hired Todd Howard, who had coached at the high school level at Brebeuf. Coach was the head coach at IUPUI and had been there for a long time. How big a benefit is that going to be to have somebody that has, obviously a thumbprint not only at the high school level but also at the college level here within the city?
Oh, he's been huge. I mean, and I've known Todd forever, but especially when we're trying to get this thing off the ground. I mean, his attention to detail and just getting everything set up. I mean, I made him not just assistant, associate head coach. I mean, because he's had to do a lot more than he probably should have, just because of my situation dealing with moving the state and everything. And but he's been unbelievable. And I was fortunate enough. People are calling you. You should hire this guy. You should hire that guy. And a lot of people are like, hey, I got this young guy. Well, I don't really want a young guy. I want somebody that's been through it, that's been hired, fired, won, lost, high school, college. And I was fortunate enough, Todd just reached out to me just to congratulate me on the job. And then he, just mentioned, hey, I don't know what you're doing with your staff, but, I'd love to have a conversation with you. I called him right away. And we just started talking about the situation. And he runs the Carmel Basketball Academy also. And the great thing about coaching at the NAIA level, you can do, especially as assistant, you can do something else. And so he'll continue doing that and being my assistant. But I can't explain. I mean, he's one of the best I've been around when it came to assistants, not just guys I've worked with. I mean, knowing all the guys my dad had on his staff, growing up with them. I mean, he's been unbelievable, especially with, like, I'm gone for 10 days and, I know there's no problems going to happen back at Marion. He goes in every day to make sure everything's going well, make sure our kids are signed up for classes, everything's on track. So when school starts, when I get back next week, everything's in place. And so I can't explain. I mean, I knew he was going to be good, but he's been unbelievable.
Pat, in terms of, being out in Vegas, and, I think people know this, but you were working for the Pacers. You were in the scouting department there. You vacate that job now. But did you get a chance, since you were out there, did you go to Summer League? And if so, can you give us just your thoughts, I guess, on where the Pacers are and the pieces that Kevin Pritchard, Chad Buchanan, Ryan Carr, et cetera, added?
Well, no, I did not go to Summer League. I just actually, because everything was kind of a cluster, when I got hired, I just got back to Vegas a few weeks ago to get my house on the market. And then we just came back this week we actually sold it to close on it. So, I mean, I watched them on TV, but I wasn't involved at the Summer League. But, a kid like Furphy that we got, all year long, we had him in the first round. And a lot of people around the league had him as a first-round pick. But, things happened during the draft. And so that was a great get from a standpoint in the second round. I mean, you get a first-round talent in the second round, because I guarantee if he would have stayed next year, which there were rumors, and he definitely would have been a high first-round pick next year. But the kid decided to come out, and we lucked out, for our benefit, because Coach Carlisle loves guys that have a feel for the game and can shoot, and he can do those. And then, I think Walker showed glimpses of why we drafted him so high last year in the Summer League. And then, and then we're bringing pretty much everybody back, to go at it again. So I just think the pieces are there, and there wasn't really much to do from trade standpoint, free agent standpoint. It's just these guys are going to be a year older and hopefully, been working during the summer to improve. But, all the pieces are there. And so, I'm like a fan now. I'm a fan now because I'm not, on the inside of everything. But I just think the sky's the limit. Plus we got Coach Carlisle as our coach. I just think it's going to keep getting better and better. I think we're ahead of schedule. Honestly, when we met last year in training camp, we talked about, hey, if we could get in that 8th to 10th spot in the playoffs, it'd be huge for us. But then they just kept getting better, started winning more games, started gelling together, and Coach Carlisle had the offense clicking. And so, not to put pressure on them, but I just think there's going to be a lot of good things to come from here on out.
Pat, you mentioned Jarris Walker. I, too, liked what I had seen from him during Summer League just a couple weeks ago. From us from afar, last year it felt like one of the primary reasons there wasn't real NBA experience playing time wise for him, as much as you might see at other clubs with a rookie, was because of the log jam at his specific position or with his skill set. Is that accurate? Is that what you guys had seen internally? And what does he need to continue to do in your mind to be able to be the player that you guys drafted him to be?
Yeah, one, we had the log jam, and, Coach Carlisle likes to play older players. All coaches do. I mean, in college, high school, I don't care what level you're at, you like to play the veterans. But what also I think hurt him was a standpoint, we were good. A lot of these rookies go to bad teams, and so they get the minutes because, teams are, we're not going to win anyway, so let's play our young guys, develop them. And, he showed, had some good games down the G League for us. And but it was just a situation from the log jam, and we were good. But I'd rather be in that situation as a player, because I think he got to learn from some good guys. But now for himself, he's got to get still improve his outside shot, and cut down on the turnovers. But he just has a good feel, versatile player. That's where the league's going. He can get the rebound, he can bring it up the court. But he's just got to continue to improve. But I think you'll see his minutes increase this year. And he'll just, and I think he'll be a huge piece. And then, no one's talked about, Matherin was hurt, for the last couple months of the season. So now you add him into the fold with Furphy. And boy, I mean, you got three guys that can help and are the future of the team. Plus, Halliburton's young. I mean, that's why I just think the future's bright, and we were ahead of schedule of what we really thought of this past year.
Are you surprised Halliburton is not getting more minutes? I know it's early in the Olympic rounds.
Yeah, and Tatum didn't get any minutes last game. You just don't know what's going on, if guys are hurt or you just don't know that situation. And, I just read an article today about most teams are playing 10 guys, and then some teams are playing 12. And then Charles Barkley talked about when he was on the Dream Team, Chuck Daly made sure that all 12 guys played. And even Christian Laettner got a couple minutes in the gold medal game. So it'll be interesting from here on out, how they do. But, like you guys, we're on the outside of it, we just don't know the dynamics. But the great thing about Halliburton, though, if you watch him on the bench, you think the guy played 40 minutes. I mean, that's a great thing. He doesn't sulk. He cheers on his teammates. I mean, that's what he's so important as a leader for us. I mean, he's just a good dude, and you can see that. I mean, you can't tell he didn't get in the game. If you even today, if you watch that game at noon today, if he doesn't get to play, he's the first one off the bench, high-fiving guys and just cheering his teammates on. But yeah, from my standpoint, I think he should be getting some minutes just because how good he is and Tatum. But, we just don't know the dynamics. And it was just one game. They still got another couple weeks, so things could change.
Pat, I don't know if you ever – Pat Knight's our guest, by the way. I don't know if you ever, would talk with your dad about – he didn't seem to me to be the kind of guy that would necessarily be like a brag up front about his accomplishments or his team's accomplishments kind of guy. But where did – coaching the 84 Olympic team, do you think, for your dad? Where did that rank for him, and how often did he talk about, if it was high on the list, his pride in being able to do that?
That was probably the thing for him. I mean, because, my dad was such a history buff, his respect for the military, being at West Point, that was his number one deal, representing the United States. And he was pissed off when the Russians didn't go. I mean, pissed. I remember as a little kid. I mean, he wanted to beat the Russians so bad. And that was kind of the only negative about the whole deal. I mean, he wanted the Russians bad because, they were the best team. And so that was kind of the only down point for him when they when they didn't go. And I remember Leroy Neiman sent him this huge print. And, I mean, this thing, it could cover a whole wall, and he autographed it to my dad. And it was a painting from the 1980 Olympics. And my dad had it, in his office for autographed by Leroy Neiman to my dad, wish him good luck, 84 Olympics. But when the Russians backed out because it depicted the 1980 Olympics when they were in Russia, he got rid of it. And so it's kind of interesting, anything to do with the Russians, he got rid of when they decided not to play in it. And I was finding Olympic stuff today. I mean, practice jerseys I had for myself, pictures, and that was the deal for him. And then he's really close to Coach Iba. I don't know if many people realize it. When they won the gold medal, because Coach Iba got screwed again, the Russians again.
Yeah, in 72, right?
In the Olympics. So my dad had Coach Iba as an advisor on his staff. He was at the trials, traveled with us, the Olympics with us, everything. And so the Olympic team actually came over to lift my dad on his shoulder. He made him lift up Coach Iba before they lifted him up.
Pat, lastly, as you are packing up from Las Vegas to move back to Indiana to take over the job at Marion, there has to be something that you're packing that your wife is like, okay, look, I've been looking for a reason for you to tell you that we're not going to take that to the new place. I don't know if it's an Elvis clock. I don't know if it's a flying squirrel pet. There's got to be something. Well, tell me the thing that you're not allowed to bring back.
I got a whole collection of Rat Pack memorabilia and Elvis memorabilia. So we actually have an Elvis room, and I'm actually going to have an Elvis room at my place, and she's not really happy about that because I got the gaudiest fireplace that lights up, and it's got jewels and stuff. I found it in Indianapolis. But, yeah, I have to get rid of – I'm looking at it right now. I think I got – holy shit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm sitting on this bed. I think I got 12 Rat Pack things I have to pitch, pictures and stuff I've gotten on eBay and Amazon. And then she made me we actually had an Elvis Christmas tree that I put in the Elvis room.
Yeah, that's classy.
Storage, I had to get rid of that went straight in the trash. All the Elvis ornaments and the Elvis Christmas tree.
That's too bad.
Does it sing? Did the tree sing? Did it have any musical elements to it?
But the ornaments do. Every ornament, has a different song on it. Oh yeah, she opened up the box and she's like, She's like, no.
What's your favorite Elvis song?
Suspicious Minds.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that. Argue that. People don't believe me, by the way, when I tell them, and I don't know if I should divulge this on the radio or not, but fact or fiction, in college, you had a pet flying squirrel.
Yep. Got lost in the freaking, you remember it got stuck underneath, it crawled underneath the washing machines at Jackson Heights, and the exterminator came and sprayed underneath and killed the flying squirrel.
That's correct.
Rocky. He named it Rocky after Rocky and Bullwinkle.
That's exactly right. Rocky, poor Rocky, man. I mean, and he was cool, right? He'd get out and do his thing. He was cool. Didn't last for long.
It wasn't as good as the pig, though.
Well, I remember the pig, if I'm not mistaken, the problem became that the pig outgrew the litter box, right?
Well, the pig was a pig. Pat Graham, I hadn't seen Pat Graham in years. I see him in an AAU event, and the first thing he talks about is this pig, and he was like, this idiot comes home in Jackson Heights like, hey, I got a pot-bellied pig. And I was like, well, how much did you pay for it? And he's like, PK's like, I paid $20 for it. And Pat Graham's like, I'm thinking to myself, a pot-bellied pig, they're like $200 to $500. This guy just bought a pig. And, of course, she started growing tucks and got huge. And it was a pig. I mean, it wasn't a pot-bellied pig, but it was better than a dog. But, yeah, we had to give it to a farm outside of Bloomington.
Outgrew the litter box. That became a bit of a hazard.
Well, the problem was I got home and I got mad because she was missing the litter box. And so we hid in the bathroom. And when she went to the litter box, the poor thing actually was in the litter box, but her butt was sticking way outside of it.
That's what I mean. It became a bit of a problem, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Pat, we appreciate it. Safe travels back, and we look forward to having you on again. But again, November 1st in Bloomington, as Jimmy points out, going to be a special day in more ways than one. But Marion starting things off against Indiana. A lot of work to do between now and then. Appreciate the time. Safe travels. All right.
All right, guys. Look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Pat Knight, again, the head basketball coach at Marion. Yep, we had I'm telling you, that guy in college, we had so much fun. All within, like, the bounds of legalities, but a lot of fun.
If you play that scenario out where somebody gets duped with whether or not it is a miniature pig or it's a full-size pig, if you replay that in 2024, all you got to do is do a quick Google search, find the nearest farm, and you can rectify that. I imagine a lot of work had to be done to figure out what to do with the pig once it got too big.
Yeah. Well, the good news is there are farms right. And Pat grew up in Bloomington, right? So he knew all these. The potbelly pig was just before I knew him. Now, we were neighbors in college. I've told that before. I think people know that. But when he got the flying squirrel, we're sitting there one day, and he says, and again, he and Ryan Carr lived together, and then I lived next door, and it was like Kramer and Jerry on Seinfeld. I mean, we were just going back and forth and back and forth, and then we made it like one big apartment. So he says one day, like, hey, there's a guy that sells exotic animals. I want to get a flying squirrel. So we went out to this area in Ellettsville outside of Bloomington, and we show up, and this guy lived, it was like a mobile home, and he brings out this flying squirrel. It was a cute animal, and we hear this roaring noise, and we're like, no, what is that? And he says, oh, you want to come out here? And he takes us around the back, and he has a Siberian tiger. Now, I'm not saying any of this is even like scrupulous now. I mean, this was 30 years ago. And he has this tiger in a huge caged-in area, but he unlocks the cage and goes in and is like wrestling with this Siberian tiger. This basically is the Tiger King of Indiana.
Right. Sure.
So he's wrestling around with this animal and giving it noogies and everything else, and the animal's pawing at him. And then he says to us, like, you guys ought to come in here and play. I remember exactly. She's just a big cat. Just come in here and play. And
you have a good time?
Pat's like, there is zero chance we're getting in there, right? So we got the flying squirrel, and he was cool. And Pat is correct. Unfortunately, it was a nocturnal animal, and one day or one evening when we were not aware, Rocky went out and got underneath the dishwasher, and we didn't know where it was, and then he's right. The exterminator came, and unfortunately, that was it for Rocky. But fun times.
R.I.P.
Raise a glass in his honor at some point, yeah.
But Pat was a huge Elvis fan, had an Elvis clock that had little swiveling legs back and forth. And then I've told you before, we went and we bought little at White Rabbit on the square, we bought cement Buddha statues. Or not statues, but I don't even know how you describe them. But anyway, he eventually had to get rid of his. I had given mine to a buddy in town who people would know his name. He kept it for a while, and then when he got married, he called me up and said, good news, I'm getting married. I said, okay. And he goes, and that means that you got to take Buddha back. She won't let me have it because we painted him gold, and it was good stuff. Fun times in college, fun times. We come back, Colts camp today. One guy got a little bit dinged up, but he'd had a good day before that. We'll tell you who it is next. a great song. This would be my vote on the poll that I did on Twitter. Which is the best Prince song? 1999, When Doves Cry, Let's Go Crazy, and Purple Rain were the 4 options that I gave. We'll do another one maybe tonight. Thank you to Pat Knight for his time. My name is Jake Query, Jimmy Cook, Eddie Garrison, the other voices you hear on this program. It's Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan. The Colts continue training camp out at Grand Park. Today it was a non-pads day. And Eddie, Juju Brents joined us earlier in the program. That will be available to folks on the podcast center, correct?
Yes, sir. Exactly where you can find our conversation from yesterday with Tony Stewart.
And in that conversation with Tony Stewart, by the way, thank you to Tony Stewart and those that sent that back out, redistributed that, and commented on it. I always appreciate comments like this, by the way, which this is the goal, admittedly. We call it drive time or driveway radio. Jake, I'm sitting in my car and I can't get out because this interview with Pat Knight is awesome. That's the goal. Thank you very much for that, and thanks to Pat as well. So, camp today, the one thing we know, Jimmy, is that at the end of camp it appears as though, and I don't think it was anything major, but Alec Pierce might have tweaked something or landed awkwardly and got up gingerly. I don't think he was carted off, right? But he was just kind of had his bell rung type deal.
Yeah, Kevin Bowen, again, the fans' very own out there at Colts camp, on Twitter at KBowen1070, had mentioned that Pierce appeared to get hurt trying to haul in an Anthony Richardson overthrow late in practice. He didn't return in terms of being out there on the practice field, but was still out there on the sidelines interacting with his fellow wide receivers. So it didn't sound like, at least from initial reporting, Jake, that was around the top of the show when Kevin had tweeted that he was in dire straits by any means, but something I chalked it up to this. Again, I'm not out there. I haven't heard this, but just around the league, the thought has been as it gets hotter out there, it's easier for something even very minor to be a reason to say, hey, the conditions out here are what they are. Let's be safe. Let's get you off. And it was pretty close to the end of the day from what Kevin's tweeted.
But he had to that point, and I know that it probably sounded like the dumbest question everyone asked James Boyd. I know that they do 11 on 11 drills, and that's the preferred, like when you hear they're doing 11 on 11 and so is the number 2 receiver, but they were the number 2 in the 7 on 7 drills. And my question was, other than the number of people on the field, like what is the actual difference in why one is prioritized or seen? Obviously, it's the better simulation, right? But Alec Pierce apparently has had a really good day today. One practice does not a season make, I realize. But it beats the alternative, Jimmy, because this is probably a big camp for him just in terms of the overall, I guess, feeling for Alec Pierce or his confidence level, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's under contract for one more season after this. This is his rookie deal. That's not to say that his NFL career would be over by any stretch by the time that contract is done, but the reality is we've yet to see from him as a NFL wide receiver what he was drafted to be, which is a guy that takes the top off the defense, has that deep threat capability, and is going to have a high success rate in terms of his catch rate when called upon. Now, the cushion or the excuse towards that has been all the changes in quarterbacks, especially last year when you thought he was finally going to have that match made in heaven quarterback that'd be able to throw it deep down the field and assist him in getting that type of separation and making those plays. Yes, he's under contract next year. His contract as a whole, inconsequential. But this is, at least in a Colts uniform, Jake, a make-or-break season for Alec Pierce in terms of his tenure with the horseshoe, because A.D. Mitchell, by all accounts, would be the new kid on the block to take that third wide receiver role. What I think winds up happening, we discussed this yesterday, is maybe they utilize both of them in such a manner that it's situational, not unlike what they're doing with the tight end room. And it's okay when that's your third wide receiver. I bring up the tight end room with that caveat because after talking with James Boyd, is that room an element of jack of all trades, masters of none? Like,
that's what it feels like, doesn't it? That's a great way of saying it.
And the reason I harp on it is James brought up this, and I'll slightly paraphrase. Situationally, you're bringing in a different tight end for maybe a short to intermediate route, or maybe you're bringing in a different tight end in obvious run blocking situations. Schematically, if you know that Mo Alley Cox is out there and it's going to be a run, I'm hypothetically throwing one out here, that takes away from a creative aspect of the offense. If you have an every down tight end, you don't know if he's going to chip and then go on a crossing route or if it's going to be a straight block. If you know every time, oh, it's Will Mallory, this is a run, where's the creativity from that sector of an Anthony Richardson, Shane Steichen-led offense? I'm not saying the wideouts can't do enough for this offense to be pretty darn creative, but that's an element that is missing, that I worry is going to be missing.
Will Mallory did not practice today, I don't believe, right? Not that that's, I'm just passing that along as a note. But one of the things, Jimmy, to me about the offense, when you combine Shane Steichen's, offensive genius, Bill Belichick, defensively, didn't it feel like no matter who New England got, they were going to become great players because of the system itself and Belichick's ability to he was like this mad scientist, right, that hung out in the lab and came up with these things.
He'll find the thing you do well, and that's gone now.
Correct.
You need to figure something else out. Yes.
Totally correct. And it feels like Shane Steichen is the offensive, by reputation or foresight, the offensive version of that. He's going to look at defenses, he's going to scout games, and he's going to come up with these brilliant schemes and plans. And Anthony Richardson is the straw mixing all of that. And what an offense they can have, because you got Jonathan Taylor that we know is dangerous. You've got Michael Pittman that is certainly reliable. You got Josh Downs that can kind of just be the guy that's, you never know where he's going to be coming across the middle or whatever it might be. And then you have, one would assume, the deep threats, whether it be Mitchell or Pierce that becomes that guy, or both. But whether it's accurate or not, the thought process feels like, Jimmy, that they're going to be this offense that just has weapons all over the field, and that would include at the tight end position. But yet, to your point, it doesn't feel like they really have any sort of a tight end that can be one that adds to that. It's almost like we're becoming spoiled, and we expect every player that they put at specialty position on the field to be one that is going to be like this hybrid, wide-open guy, right?
Yeah, and I've said this before. I don't expect him to be – I'm not looking for Travis Kelce or George Kittle, but like a Dalton Kincaid or like a middle-of-the-pack tight end that it's clear – they are the large majority snap share holder of that room is what I wanted all offseason. They weren't able to get it, and I don't know. It's very early, but when you hear a beat reporter say that there's not clear separation. The room just kind of there's not a lot of distinguishability from any of those tight ends. It's early, but it's also 3 years of track record that we have, or 2 years of track record post Jack Doyle that we have to go off of.
Well, it appeared last night on Hard Knocks. I don't know if you watched that or not, Jimmy or Jake, but they're doing
the Giants.
They're doing an off-season edition of Hard Knocks, and they did the free agency, and now they just wrapped up the draft. And on last night's episode, it was revealed that Chris Ballard called up to New York to try to trade up to 6, and they offered 15, 46, and a 2025 second. Now, who they were going to select is up in the air. Now, we know they were enamored with Brock Bowers and Malik Neighbors. So this offense could have looked different if, to Ballard's point when he was talking about it, that they made some big offers, but teams just weren't willing to move back.
And to be clear, I don't think, clearly it's not, right? I don't think that was a lie when Ballard said it. I believe you. As a general manager, if you're going to tell me that you tried to make the calls, I'm going to take you at your word. I have no other choice. I don't have a way to validate it, though. Eddie, I would have, I guess, in this instance, if they're showing that type of content. I've not watched the Giants off-season Hard Knocks, but if they're showing that call took place, then yeah, maybe that was to get a tight end. And look, honestly, Jake, if after this season, let's say the Colts let's say they win the division. They win the division, but it's a first-round exit, right? So it feels like something was achieved, but they lose the home playoff game. I know there's elements to that, but just stick with me. That all happens. If the biggest issue going into next offseason is they need to do it all tight end, great. Like, that would be awesome. If the only thing you need to answer offensively is, gosh, I want a good tight end to pair with this quarterback, I'll take that 8 ways to Sunday.
Right.
I don't know if it's going to be that simple, but like, if that call was made to the Giants with the intent of getting Brock Bowers, it is clear that at least in April, and I'm speculating there, maybe it was Neighbors, but if it was for Bowers, it's clear they want a do-it-all tight end. I would think Shane Steichen would. I brought up Dallas Goedert a number of times due to his role when Steichen was the OC in Philadelphia. If that's the only problem next offseason is, man, how do we upgrade this offense? A do-it-all tight end would be nice. That would be a great problem to have.
Yeah, it's interesting, Eddie, that you brought that up about the point made on Hard Knocks, because I'll go back to again about Chris Ballard. I think that we are programmed to believe that whenever a GM says something that they're being coy, right?
Yes.
Ballard's pretty transparent. And he had said at that time, to your point, Eddie, if I'm not mistaken, he did say on draft night that they were open to trying to move up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He just said that they just couldn't come to a deal. He said they made some massive offers. I'm assuming that's one of those, quote, massive offers.
Who did
that
the Giants end up taking?
Blake Neighbors.
Because they stayed there, right?
Yeah, I mean, immediately as soon as Joe Shane hung up the phone with Chris Ballard, he was like, yeah, that's too far back to move back. Because they had 6, and I mean, we already know the depletion of talent the Giants have, so they weren't going to move back to 15, no matter how sweet the deal was, unless they were getting a player in return.
Now, the other question, and it's a moot point now, but were they looking at receiver? Were they looking to move up to receiver? And if so, you have to ask yourself this. Let's say that's or Bowers, either one. The Colts still got, because it was such, and this is what we talked about.
Adunze was still on the board too, for what it's
what's
worth.
That?
Adunze would have. Rome Adunze was still been on the board too.
If it was
in theory.
Adunze that they were looking at, the question is this: is the gap between let's say that Adunze was the receiver the Colts were targeting. I'm not saying that it was, but let's say for the sake of argument that it was. Is the gap between Adunze and A.D. Mitchell bigger than the benefit you get of the Atu Latu? In other words, you still got a receiver that can be a guy that gives you good reps, and you have potentially a cornerstone defensive piece to go with it, as opposed to if you had done it that way, you only get one.
I'm the wrong person to ask this because I'm always offense first. And I'm always going to say if you have the opportunity to get a wide receiver that appears to be, at least on paper and everything he did last year, a game-changing tight end, I'll always take the offensive piece. So I would say how you phrased it, Jake, is the gap bigger? I would say yes, it is.
I think from the wide receiver aspect of it, I think it is, simply because you get that 5th year if they did trade up to get Neighbors or Adunze or Brock Bowers compared to the 4 guaranteed years you'll get with A.D. Mitchell. And having that extra year of control.
Fair, but what I'm saying
helps.
is, but you also have now, you a lot of it comes down to, I mean, it is entirely possible, maybe not probable, but it's entirely possible that we are going to look back in 3 or 4 years and say, how huge was it that it fell the way they did and they got Latu?
Yeah.
Especially, we could say that now already just because of, the injury to Samson Ebukam at the position.
Yeah.
And now there is a up-and-coming player in Leatu Latu, hopefully taking most of those reps.
I hear exactly what you're saying, and I am very excited they have Latu, and I think we're going to wind up saying, as you mentioned, in 2 to 3 years, it was great the way the board fell, but given this new nugget of information from Giants Hard Knocks last night, if you're asking me if I could have them do everything exactly the same or live in a world where instead of Latu they had Adunze or Bowers, I would take the latter. I would take Adunze or Bowers.
By the way, you mentioned George Kittle, right?
Yeah.
I always think of the furniture store. And then you said Dalton Kincaid. You ever been to that Kincaid's Meats?
I've not.
You been there, Eddie?
No.
I think that's the name of it, isn't it? Over at like 56 in Illinois. I always thought it'd be cool to have a hat from there. Kincaid. Can we look? I'm pretty sure it's a butcher shop.
Kincaid's Meat Market.
Yeah. Is it still there over there on the north side?
They close at 6.
Yeah. I don't know. They sell hats. I think it'd be cool to have a Kincaid's Meat Market hat.
The other minor piece of news today that we haven't touched on, the Big Ten will be returning to Indy for the conference basketball tournament. The men's and women's will be.
Do they sell hats?
I'm assuming so. Will be here in 25. Women's will be in 26, and then the men will be back in 27.
So you said both here in 25, though.
Correct.
That's exciting. Look, I know we talk about,
especially considering that they could move it anywhere now.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be elements of this in the coming decade of frustration from Hoosiers because we know how well we run events.
IU fans or
the entire state. I appreciate the clarity there. There's going to be frustration from Indiana residents because we do events so well, and you think of this as the heartland of the Big Ten. So it's good to see the commitment for football to 2028, I think, and now men's basketball and women's basketball conference tournament coming back here. But the reality is, at some point, even if Indiana continues to do things perfect from a host standpoint, you knew by expansion that it's movable, Jake. I mean, we saw it even with the basketball tournament, like you highlighted, it being in D.C. or in Minnesota or wherever. They want to make this a traveling thing to a lesser extent like what the NFL draft and it has doing in this traveling circus thing. So it's bittersweet for me, but in the short term, being able to have it back, one of my favorite aspects of sport is conference championship week. To have the Big Ten tournament back in the backyard is special.
What about one of the butcher coats? You think I can get one of those from Kincaid's?
You want
they
a coat
don't
or
have
an
hats,
apron?
huh?
You want it for a coat or an apron?
Apron, yeah. Well, the coat would be cool to just kind of. You think I could make that a fashion statement? Just wear it with just walk around.
You could probably make anything a fashion statement, Jake.
Well, thank you, Eddie. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you.
It's like the only compliment I'll ever give you about your fashion.
The
and
roles
your,
have
your
reversed
appearance.
here.
Are you saying? Wait a minute. Hold on. Did you just confess, Eddie, that even in my advanced age that I have an aura of coolness about me?
You're pretty cool, yeah. I wouldn't say you have an aura.
Hell yeah. Look at Eddie.
You can never accuse me of kissing up again, by the way.
I can.
What about just a trucker hat that says Kincaid's Meat Market?
Maybe Jake just needed to pick me up, and I just picked him up there, Jimmy.
He used the phrase kissing up before I did, for the record.
I know.
Just a with the little rope thing on it, and then just a round thing. It just says Kincaid's Meat Market. It just sounds like a trucker hat. Doesn't that sound cool?
I would imagine there's a wide variety of apparel if you were to call up Kincaid's Meat Market.
I'll bet you wear one of those hats, nobody would. You walk into a bar wearing a hat that says Kincaid's Meat Market, like a trucker hat like that, nobody's messing with you. They automatically think to themselves, that guy is a rear kicking cowboy, right? And I'm cleaning.
I understand you did.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
I figured Pat and I kind of pushed the envelope there, right? A couple times. So I figured.
So did Juju.
Juju Brents definitely did, right? Juju Brents, both those interviews available on the podcast center at 1075thefan.com. Jimmy's plays of the day are next.
A majority of today's plays of the day taking place in Paris as the Olympic Games continue. We'll start first with Team USA basketball. Look, they're favored by 29.5 against South Sudan today. I'm with James Boyd. While your gut says to scoop those points, I'm just going to stay away because I could easily see this being one of those wake-up call statement games. Yeah, we get it. You played us with a point. last time, but they could blow them out. So I'm staying away. Instead, I'll go player props over 15.5. I beg your pardon. This is just changing at the horn. Over 15.5 total points for LeBron James today for Team USA against South Sudan. In the pool, in the 100-meter freestyle for the men's division, we will take Jack Alexi of Team USA to win a medal. That at plus 200 odds. That takes place today at 4:30. Last one for you on the Olympic side, we will take Scotty Scheffler as the winner of the gold medal in Olympic golf. That tees off tomorrow morning. One baseball bet for you. Give me the Seattle Mariners to win outright over the Boston Red Sox. Eddie, any selections for you?
No selections for me.
So tomorrow, Jake, if I'm not mistaken, if the signs are pointing in the right direction, the official debut of Greenfield Signs and Lighting, if my dates
This
are
is
correct,
the
right?
final unsponsored Jimmy's Plays of the Day on this program, right?
It is.
Thank you to our friends at Greenfield Signs. GreenfieldSigns.com for all your needs, which essentially basically just got sponsorship there, right?
Well, happy to do it. Happy to give a little extra cherry on top with them partnering up with us.
When are the White Sox going to win again? Do we have an over-under on that?
Fantastic question, Jake.
They've lost 15 straight. They did a firehouse. They also traded Eloy Jimenez, you know to who, right?
Hey, root for me.
He's now a cute fella. He's the one that when he was in left field and I shouted his name, he looked up and gave me the peace sign thing, and I got a fabulous photo of it, and we thought it was neat. And then I was like, you know what? I'm a 49-year-old guy getting super excited over a Major League Baseball player acknowledging me.
Was that photo especially cool because there was nobody in front of you to block the photo?
Yeah, we did kind of move down. By the way, just so you know, right now they trail 4-3 in the third inning to Kansas City.
Do you think he reacted with a peace sign because he was startled to hear a fan? Do you think that kind of spooked him?
I should be clear. I didn't actually yell his name out.
Okay.
Shannon and I were sitting in our seats in left field, and I said to him, see that guy there in left field? He's one of their better players, but his name's Eloy Jimenez. And he turned around and said, hey, what's going on? What's up? You guys doing okay over there? Yeah. All right, cool.
Are you lost? Do you need directions?
Fly ball's coming this way. That's right. Thanks for stopping on your way to the Cubs game.
Exactly.
That's what he said to me.
Wrigleyville's that way, guys.
4-3, they're down right now. They've lost 15 in a row, have the White Sox. And then they go into a 3-game set at Minnesota. Good news. Then they go to Oakland, and they take on the A's for 3 in a row. They'll get one of those, right?
They don't even have the ushers work that day.
Who wins more games the rest of the way, the White Sox or the Marlins?
It's a great
the
question.
Marlins. I mean, the White Sox might lose 120 games this year, which is pretty impressive.
It'd be the second
I think at this
most
point you just
all-time.
go for it, right?
Yep.
Just go for history.
Okay, I said this earlier in the show, and this is just incredible. The Marlins went on that full sale at the deadline and in the weeks leading up. After the trade deadline, the Marlins payroll is $13.75 million total. There are over 100 players that make more than that just this season.
That's incredible.
It's awesome.
Now, what's better is when
Go to
a lot
Oakland,
of times
Jimmy.
a team like that go to who?
Is it worse? Really?
I would assume, yeah.
Which team?
He said the Oakland
Athletics.
Athletics is worse.
Oh, Moneyball. I always like when a team, though, like that, you know, Kansas City Royals a couple years ago when they won the World Series and they were like 21st in payroll. That's what you root for, right? There was a year where the Yankees were knocked out. I can't remember who knocked them out. It might have been, was it Detroit that eliminated them? And the entire, the 3-4-5 lineup of the Yankees was more than the entire payroll of the team that eliminated them.
Yeah, it would have been the Verlander years back in.
What was that? Who was
2012.
that? Was that Mark Whitten?
A-Rod was one of them.
Oh, was he?
JMV just walked in. John,
Big
you got a
hit,
big
Mark
show lined
Whitten.
up, right?
Yeah, man. We're going to be good. Kenny Moore. I think Keefer's going to be on. Swebo's good buddy. And Chad Buchanan.
Hold on.
Swebo's good buddy.
Andy
Bowen.
Sweeney's got a good buddy?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Bowen. His
Okay.
bro. They're bros.
Is that what by the way, Eddie, would you like to divulge to JMV what you told me earlier and see if JMV's surprised by it?
Nope.
Eddie had a dinner last night with the guys that
Oh,
does Christian
yeah.
training.
Those guys.
Mark Boyle didn't know that Eddie worked on this show and didn't know that I was on the fan.
He knew of me, though, which I was
Here's my
very happy.
guess. He knew, but he told Eddie he didn't.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I bet you.
He didn't know.
I bet you. I'm pretty savvy about stuff like this.
I was thinking he'd have to know, right? I mean, it's the
of
flagship
course.
of the.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Of course. Noon until 3. Absolutely.
Follows me on Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, we're buddies. I talk to him occasionally.
I don't know if you can tell, John. He's very butthurt about this.
Huh?
I don't know if you can tell. Jake's very butthurt about this.
Are you really butthurt about
No.
this? Oh. No, I bet you. Don't you think he was just.
I don't think so.
Right.
I don't think so.
I bet.
If it was true, I'd
Polygraph out there.
I find it not overly surprising, right?
Where'd you guys go last night? Where'd you have meat?
Sullivan Steakhouse.
I love Sullivan Steakhouse.
Good place.
Shout out to my man John up there.
Eddie, what'd you get?
John Stanley's a
I got a
stud.
steak.
Nice.
I haven't been in a while. Man, at one time I went and remember the Thunder Cars of Indiana and Anderson on HBO?
Yes. Yeah.
I took Wild Willie and all the Thunder Car guys to Sullivan's. It was glorious, let me tell you.
I can only imagine.
People
that
in
had to been
Anderson
good.
hate the references of Thunder Cars of Indiana.
You think?
But it was so entertaining, man. Me and Wild Willie and all the Thunder Cars from Indiana guys on HBO.
I mean, you could have gone to Anderson and gone to one of the 6 IHOPs along Scatterfield,
I know
right?
it. Yeah. Go up to Frisch's Big Boy.
That's right. All right, JMV's got on his big red T-shirt, which means that he is hoping for some kidney stones.
Exactly. Give me some kidney stones, Big Red. Thanks a lot.
And he is up next. Kenny Moore will join him between now and 6 p.m. We'll be back with you at noon tomorrow. Thanks for listening to Aquarian Company.